Well, Brian, you made it.
I made it. Thank you.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you coming out here and taking the time to fly out here. And I'm really interested for everybody to hear your story. I guess real quick, what we'll do is just a quick introduction of you. For people that don't know you, Brian Harpole served as a police officer in Texas for 14 years. During his career, Brian was assigned to many different areas, including patrol, tactical unit, criminal and narcotic interdiction, bicycle unit, training and administration. While assigned to these units, Brian received over 25 accommodations for exemplary service to include recognition for valor, meritorious service, meritorious conduct, life-saving, and Officer of the Year. In 2008, you know what, I'll stop right there because I kind of want to hear how you kind of got into the security world, and you know we'll just kind of take it from there. So as far as your career goes, anything that I didn't cover right there, let us know, and just kind of introduce yourself to the public from kind of that standpoint.
Yeah, and first I'd like to say thank you for having me.
Yeah.
The way I got here, and it's kind of a good story, and so I wanted to share it. A couple of my guys actually from the team came to me after the assassination and watched some of the videos you'd been putting up, and we had grown accustomed at that point to just being obliterated with lies. And then they came to me and they were like, hey, or they were sending it to me and they were saying, hey, look at this. This guy's like really out there trying to find the facts. Mm-hmm. And so we watched it, and then and so they were like, wow, this is close. I mean, like the closest anybody's got, and the closest to the truth. And then my fiance, actually, she during this whole thing, she developed a thing where everything that came on the internet, she would look at it, because she didn't want me looking at it. And so she basically ran the hard guard and saw all the ugly stuff. And if it was really bad, she'd bring it to me and she said, hey, I think you need to watch this. But then she brought me your stuff. And she's like, man, this guy, you know, and she said, he's really trying to put the right stuff out there, the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and she's like, you need to call him. You need to call him. And I was like, okay. And then at the time, you know, I'm literally 22 hours a day, just trying to do everything. And she was on me, like, you need to call him. Did you call Gary? Did you call him? And I was like, no. And finally, I mean, I sat down, and I think she texted you.
Mm-hmm. She did.
And so she sat me down on the end of the bed, and she said, call him right now. And she goes, this behavior that's true like this deserves that. And so that's how we got here.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, one of the things, and we'll kind of hit some of these too, but the reality is that people were taking this information vacuum and things that they couldn't see. And we'll get into, like, for instance, you know, you guys behind the table working on Charlie. Mm-hmm. And in that void of information, they were filling it in with the most horrific. And look, I said it at the time on the video, I'll say it now. I don't know exactly what you were doing, but I had a pretty good idea of what was taking place behind there. And I think the story deserves some balance, right? It's okay for people to go out there and speculate, and you know, and I think there's some, when you start accusing people of some of the horrific things that you and your men have been accused of, without at least giving some balance, saying, okay, this is what could be happening, but also here's another option. And you need to weigh both of that information. And what I was seeing was a channelization of information that was just nothing but demonization, character assassination, and convicting you guys in the public eye of things that, to me, was like, I feel like I'm watching a different video than everybody else that's saying these things. And I think that, number one, that's the American way to do this. Like, that's the moral, ethical way to do this, and saying, hey, look, that's fine if we want to highlight some things that maybe should be investigated, or, hey, I'm suspicious of this person or this person. But to go from, hey, I don't have any information, to filling that information with just, hey, they're guilty of murder, conspiracy, assassination, it's just, it's actually disappointing to see Americans in general do it, but especially when we have very prominent social media people out there doing it too. And it's you know, it is what it is. And one of the things I'll tell you, you know, when you called me, man, I got to be honest with you. Number one, you know how you talk to somebody on the phone and then you kind of have this expectation. Of course, I've watched a lot of video of you. Like it was you're a different person talking to you in person than you were on the phone. And I could tell you were, I don't know, you know, I don't want to say broken, but
I was going to say beaten.
yeah, like you'd clearly had enough. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, I just heard the pain in your voice. And, you know, we had a great discussion last night. You know, we went out to eat, you, me and my wife. And, you know, when you're talking to me and you're telling me about your family, and, you know, we weren't even talking about any of this, and like all this stuff, as I'm sitting there talking to you, all the stuff that I've heard said about you, you know, flashing through my mind, and seeing the reality of who you are as a person, and thinking about your family and your kids, you know, well, that was when I got up and used the restroom, and I was about to start crying, and I feel emotional about it now. I don't think people understand the human fallout of some of the things that have been being said about you, your team, and everything else. And, you know, we'll get into that for sure. But what I do want to do is I want to start this out on a high note. I did get you some gifts, and I got one for your fiance as well. It's just a shirt. But
that's unnecessary. Thank you, but I will wear it proudly.
But given your line of work, and I've done a lot of traveling, these two products are things that I literally use every single day. We carry them, and I just want to give these to you. This is a Burlap stock flex bag.
Yeah.
It's a great personal carry bag, concealed carry off body, allows you to keep med gear in it, and I don't know if I'd bet my life on it, but it is a level 3A panel in there as well.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow.
So it gives you some ballistic protection. And one of my favorite items I've carried all over the world. This is a karambit, high desert karambit.
Thank you.
And hopefully, you know, when you're out there doing God's work and traveling, you know, hopefully that'll serve you well and you'll think about us.
That'll become my everyday carry.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you.
No
thank
problem.
you very much.
One of the things I kind of wanted to just kind of throw some context into the beginning of this interview is we have definitely lost faith in our American institutions. We've lost faith in the media because of all the lies that we've been exposed to. And look, government conspiracies absolutely are real. We saw that with COVID-19. We saw that with January 6th. I think to some degree, at least felt like a cover-up from July 13th, the attempted assassination of President Trump. And, you know, going back in history, our government has lied to us time and time again. And there's many factual things that we can point to and say, hey, this is why we don't trust the government. And I completely get it. And then the media is even worse. You know, they omit information. They're pushing an agenda and give you just the information that they want you to see so that you believe the agenda that they're trying to fulfill. And, you know, there's this big call. And one of the things that I wanted to get in here and start talking about current events and politics was because of a complete lack of trust in the media and these government institutions. And there's no doubt that all of those entities lie. But what we're seeing is a lot of the social media and these folks that are claiming to be these citizen journalists are out fake newsing the fake news. And what I wanted to kind of go through to set the context and almost establish a historical record on this is let's talk about the media source lies that we've seen for the beginning of this. First thing that came out was Tyler Robinson was a right-winger. It was also said that the event was only advertised 2 days prior to on September 9th, so only an insider would have time to plan for that. The truth is TPUSA announced this event on August 27th, and on that day or shortly thereafter, it was announced it was going to be held in the UVU courtyard. I've also heard from locals at UVU and in Orem that there was buzz about it, and people knew about that event and where it was going to be held even long before there. So there was a good 2 weeks, week and a half in advance of people knowing about where this event was going to be held. And the other thing about that is, like, there's not a lot of space at UVU.
Yeah.
You know, there's kind of only one place where they're going to be. I believe the Sorensen Center can hold like about 1,000 people in an indoor venue. So if you know that event is being held at UVU, it's not, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out where it's going to be held in the courtyard. And then obviously you can look at that courtyard and say, I wonder where they're going to put the main speaker. It's pretty obvious.
And you're right to that. I kind of likened it once to, if you took an overhead at Thermopylae, you know where it was going to go down.
Yeah.
And so, that's where we were going to be.
Yeah.
You know, so.
It was also said right at the beginning there was no access to the roof, and it had to be an inside or professional hit. I was shocked to see at UVU you can walk right up to, and really from the courtyard area, you basically have a covered and concealed way to get up there. I mean, it's easy access, and all you have to do is jump the railing. Some other things we heard right off the beginning, and we'll talk more about him specifically, but Rick Cutler used a palm gun to kill Charlie. An iPhone gun from someone in the crowd killed Charlie. TPUSA had a camera gun behind him, and that's what killed Charlie. Exploding microphone or exploding cross is what killed him. There was an assassin in the trap door beneath the table. Both of those utility hatches were far to the left, were exposed to the public the entire time throughout that event. That was ridiculous. They said there was a shooter that looked like a bush on the balcony of the Brandon Fugel building at Charlie's 4 o'clock. Not plausible due to the visibility of everyone. That is going there. One of the things I immediately noticed was everything is so much closer than it looks on TV. Like the idea that somebody would be up on that balcony that is like 100 feet away and people not see them. I mean, it's insane. There was a shooter on the roof of the Brandon Fugel building at Charlie's 4 o'clock. There was no line of sight to that spot. We've proven that. The wound that we see is an exit wound, and that Charlie was actually shot from the rear. Charlie faked his death, and what we see is a hologram that's been going around. Also that he faked his death, and that was all special effects. The FBI footage was AI because people disappeared behind trees. I proved that was not true at UVU. They said Tyler Robinson was never at UVU. Both of his parents identified him through the surveillance footage at UVU, and there's a lot of other evidence that proves that he was there. We heard that the landscaping work was done by Matt Robinson, Tyler's father. That was not true. That is a lie. That there were flying drones that no one could see that shot and killed Charlie and was using some sort of IR laser to target them. The security team, another lie was that the security team, drove him to the hospital that was further away to intentionally delay his treatment. That takes a quick Google search. It's not true. Charlie was taken to the Timpanogos Regional Hospital, which had a level 3 trauma rating and was 5 to 8 minutes drive depending on the time of day. The next nearest one that had a trauma rating was Utah Valley Hospital, which had a level 2 trauma rating, but it was 10 to 12 minute drive depending on the time of day. There was said that there was no autopsy, and there was no medical examiner's report. That was a lie. Everyone said there was no blood on any of you after you were treating Charlie. I posted pictures and I had a whole video on that and said that was a lie. All of these, and I could list 20 more, but all of these are lies, and not a single one of these lies were put forward by the government. This was all generated by social media, and I think there's lots of different reasons for it. I do think that we are in the middle of some sort of psychological operation. I think people, both foreign adversaries, are capitalizing on this moment, and they're exploiting people's distrust of our government. And I do think there's political and other ideological entities that are planting these seeds and pushing this for more division here in the United States and within the conservative party, and just creating chaos. I don't think they care, to be honest, whether you're conservative, you're left, and I think we end up being manipulated on all sides of the political aisle by these agendas that use our own biases and our own vulnerabilities because of what we believe.
I agree, and this didn't happen overnight.
No.
So if and you go back, I came from a law enforcement family, and remember, my dad just going to work, right? And then so I was like, well, I never, and maybe he hit it well, but I never remember him talking about, which he didn't talk about business at home, but like what's the media saying or what people are chattering about, because we didn't have online back then, the
Right.
access, and then I entered into this in the early '90s, and it didn't exist, but I watched it progress, right? And then through law enforcement career into the private security career, and you see things that it's like the boiling pot syndrome, right? Where it kind of happens, and then people are like, yeah, it's not me though, or it doesn't affect us, and then we're just surrounded by it now, where people, you have to worry about perception.
Yeah.
And I talk to the guys about that a lot, that we have to make sure that our operational tactics and procedures, obviously, we're there to protect the client. But I tell them all the time, we're also out there to protect their reputation. So if you say something bad, or you look bad, or you have something that brings a derogatory look towards your client, it's just as bad.
Right.
And then the people out there are going to run with it. And so there's that out there now and there's no way to control it. It's like a forest fire of stupid that has no ability to be put out, and we won't. And to the point of the Constitution and the First Amendment, and you fought for it, mm-hmm. and so I believe in it, and so, but these people are just abusing that, and so we're literally in a boiling pot now, and it's boiling around us, and so how are we going to fix it? And there's an insatiable thirst for information, and I don't blame people for that.
Right.
We have been lied to by our government. Mm-hmm. I was talking to after dinner last night. I was talking to one of my buddies from Canada, and we were just kind of chatting back and forth, and he, how do we get here? And we have been lied to. We've been lied to about things that it's unbelievable, and by our government.
Yeah.
And then he and I travel the world together and go to places and do kind of sketchy things and for adventure. And a lot of the time, the only difference between these third world countries' leaders and our leaders are the brand of the suit that they're wearing. They're stealing,
Yeah.
so are they.
Yeah.
They're lying, so are they. And so acquisition of money and power, what's the difference between them and us? Just
We're smarter at figuring out how to do it legally. It's still just as corrupt, and we're doing the exact same things.
And then we sit back and watch it. And so, and that's something, like I said, is progression. And, we had it at local levels, and you saw that. But now it's like, this is a global level, because it's the internet. It's the World Wide Web. And you're right. Why would you not, if you're a foreign adversary of the United States, feed that narrative?
Yeah.
One of the things that came to me and was kind of disheartening was it was a guy who, government official, retired, had some really good insight for me on this, and he said, you got to know that you're on the radar for the Chinese and the Russians now. They've got a full workup for you. And I was like, why would, I'm nobody. They're like, oh, you're somebody. You're a Privar. You're a catalyst. And he said, they have a full workup on you now. Not such a big deal at home, but when you travel abroad, it could be valuable. I was like, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Our enemies are looking at the long game, and this is one of the things. I used to teach people security, situational awareness, and part of that was their electronic footprint. And we have Russia, China, and all these other state-sponsored elements, they're monitoring all of these people that have government ties and everything else. And just like people like you, you're saying, hey, I'm nobody. Why would they be monitoring me? You're nobody today. But 5 years from now, you could have direct access to people. You could be running for office. You could be somewhere in a position of power. And they're thinking about that, and they're figuring out ways to exploit you in the future. And that's, like, these types of things that are taking place are so much more strategic and so much more engineered than people realize. And that's the thing that I just hope people can take away from this. Yeah, the government lies, but we have to be just as suspicious of all these other sources of information. And when you're constantly getting from that source of information, they're proven wrong, proven wrong, proven wrong, and or they jump from one thing to another. Like, some different social media outlets out there have pushed these exact, like 4 or 5 of these, and these are all mutually exclusive theories, right? And when they're pushing 4 or 5 of these at the same time, or they're jumping from one to the next to the next to the next, hopefully, and the reality is some people are out there just looking for clicks. They want something sensational, salacious, and then I think there's a much more sophisticated side of that we're being fed as well.
I agree. And so here's my question to the big platforms, the leaders, the owners of the big platforms. It's like, this is going on.
Yeah.
And then you're complicit in it. And you're complicit in it to the fact that you know where it comes from, and you just let it.
Yeah.
And so, and why are you letting it? Well, obviously money. They're monetizing that stuff, And so at what point does somebody step in and go, hey, you can't do this?
The last thing that I want is, YouTube or any of these platforms to, censor more than they do. With that being said, I think this comes back to an American principle of personal responsibility. Because if your argument is, look, I have to step up and report this stuff because the government's corrupt and they're not telling the truth, or mainstream media is not telling the truth, you can't combat lies with lies. And, the answer is we hold ourselves to a higher standard of ethics, of honesty, and make sure that, it's okay for us to, it's okay for us to editorialize and to, say what we think's going on, but we need to make sure that that is very clear when we do that and separate fact from speculation. And it's like, hey, here's the facts, here's how I interpret them, just so you know, this is how I do this. And, I'm a great example of this. Like, when I first saw Charlie was shot, I genuinely thought that he had some sort of ballistic plate. What I saw was that, it looked like he was shot in the chest, and we had a deflection. And I made it very clear, like, hey, I'm speculating on this. Even when I was talking about what you guys were doing behind the table, I said, hey, look, I don't know what's going on behind the table. I'm speculating on this, but I think it's important to have this counter narrative. And I was definitely wrong on one of those. And as soon as I had information, I was like, hey, I just want you guys to know there's additional information to come out. I think I'm wrong on this. And finally, I was able to confirm through you. Once you started talking to me, that's one of the first questions I asked you was Charlie. And because I want to prove my own theory wrong. And that's how we investigate ethically. And as far as everyone else out there, there was a time in America where, like, you would be condemned if you started saying someone was guilty of something without a shred of evidence. And now, not only is it not condemned, it's encouraged and it's monetized, like you said. So there's huge incentive to lie about people, and there seems to be no ramifications. And I do think that people need to realize defamation laws are still a thing. We shouldn't libel people, and we shouldn't need a legal system to, like, people should be able to self-regulate. And the First Amendment, like the Second Amendment, is a right of ours, and it's a tool that can be used for good or it can be used for harm. And as Americans, we just need to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
I think that's going to be hard because
I agree.
I mean, we as Americans can't even regulate what we put in our mouths, much less what comes out of it.
You're not wrong.
And so, I mean, look at us when we walk around. You want to get a judgment, not a judgment, but a full view of what we are as Americans. Walk around an airport and realize how people struggle just to walk, and to see their body makeup and how many people that of age should be just trucking along. And so we can't even self-regulate what we put in, much less something so easy as what we can throw out. And that there's no accountability either way. And I think people should know, and I know you feel this way. I'm not saying we're for the conspiracy theorists, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist per se, but I do believe that there's always and has been historically stuff that's going on in the background that we don't know about.
Yeah.
But I'm on their side.
Yeah.
Ask questions, man.
Yeah.
Ask hard questions, like to you today. No softballs. This is not a Biden era press deal where they just ask him what kind of ice cream he eats. Hard questions need to be asked and answered. And if they can't, then maybe we need to go with somebody else. Yeah. And that's not something that, again, happened overnight. This has been a trend for a while, and then you take something like the internet, and it makes it so easy to be an expert. People that really think in their heads, well, let me Google this real quick, and then they come back with this expert opinion, and I'm like, man, you didn't even, and you can kind of even do a track back and look at, he didn't even go past the first page. Yeah. And so I just look at this, and you're a trainer and have a range, and we do too. We have guys that physically come to the range, and I see them manifest the things in their physical actions with a handgun that they see there that are absolute, third world idiocy. And I'm like, hey, you can't do that. And that's their training, and they think they're an expert because they watched it on some, social media channel. It's like they're seeing and they're doing, and so people inherently, we are as a species physical learners.
Yeah.
And we've dropped that to the wayside. Online school during COVID. Yeah. You think those kids grasped the concepts of what they were learning by watching on the internet while they're looking at their phones?
Right.
It's not happening, guys. And so I agree with them, and I understand. But at some point, there has to be some self-regulation. And heavens no, I don't want any more government regulations.
Yeah, agreed.
But none, because you know why? We do need them, but I can't trust them.
Yeah.
We can't trust them.
Yeah.
To do the right thing with it.
Well, I think we saw that whole thing play out, and it probably took longer than we wanted it to, but we saw that the mainstream media continued to ruin its credibility, continued to go down this path of clearly pushing an agenda over the truth. And unfortunately, I think this is just going to be another phase where we see these people out there trying to say that they're looking for the truth while they're pushing lies. And it's short-sighted, and it's a shame because there's some people out there in the media that I've respected for a really long time that I think have, I don't know, they've took a hard left turn somewhere that they shouldn't have, and I think they may be experiencing some short-term money, fame, popularity. I think when everything comes out, they're going to wish they'd kind of done things with a little bit more of a, guided by a moral compass.
But you see that now, though, and it's funny, somebody will prove them wrong, like you, and then literally it's like, anyway.
Yep.
That's their response, anyway.
It's cognitive dissonance. Yep.
And so it's like, well, wait a second. I want to pull them in and go, no. I want an apology.
Yeah.
I want something right here, right now. I want you to go back out, and it doesn't happen. Anyway, dismiss you, and that's a learned skill.
Yeah. It takes reps.
Absolutely. And they watch people do it that are above them, or our media, or our leaders. Anyway, move along, peasant.
Yeah.
And so
that's the thing too, is like everything that people are so upset about the government, like being dismissive of people's competing ideas, they're doing it at a much more rapid rate. And that is one thing that, whether we're talking about Butler, whether we're talking about even some of the COVID things, or even going back to the Las Vegas shooting with Stephen Paddock, one of the things that I think people are really disgusted with is the fact that these government institutions, when we're like, hey, we want answers to some of these things, like they almost, it's like they hold the American people like you don't deserve, like who do you think you are?
I mean, there's a prime example of that right now, and Charlie was an adamant voice for it. It was the Epstein files.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got
Talk about a conspiracy for that.
A vast majority of the American people. I mean, I don't know anybody. Let's go to D.C. right now, down the road, and say, hey, what do you want to know about the Epstein files? And how many people out of 100 would go nothing?
Yeah.
And so, why don't we know more about that? Why isn't that just like, here you go?
Yeah.
And so when stuff like that happens, and then January 6th, and all these things. Do you blame people?
Nope.
And so for the people out there that are just shotgunning stuff against the wall, it's wrong, but I understand the catalyst for it.
The American people are thirsty for information. They're thirsty and they're craving oversight on the government. And that's why, in that desperation, they'll fill their cup with just about anything. And I think that's
and that's a human condition.
It is.
It's so again, no blame. Those people out there during the media doing it, I understand the catalyst that you think you're serving, but don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution.
100%. Couldn't agree more. One of the main reasons that after we talked, one of the main things that I wanted to do was get you on here to hear your side of the story. And one of the things you really conveyed to me, and you said, look, I've been doing this a long time. I'm okay. It's not about me. It's about my men. So many of the guys in your team, they're younger guys. They still have careers ahead of them. And obviously this is going to affect them in ways that you can't imagine. And there's so many things outside of their control, and we'll get into some of those things. But one of the people that I wanted to bring up, let's talk a little bit about Rick Cutler. Man. The way that he has been targeted multiple times, and the information that's been put out by so many people. Again, they said he had a palm gun. Later that changed to like a detonator. The moment I saw this, there's a screenshot that they took from when you guys were back there after Charlie was shot. If you play the video, you never even see this moment in time, and when you're looking at it in context. But somebody took a screenshot that shows Rick, quote unquote, smiling. It never looks like a smile to me to begin with. It looks like he's grimacing. I'm sure as we've talked, there's very few times that we've smiled, but if you catch us in our mouth articulation and take a screenshot of it, you can put that up there. And the problem is somebody takes that, says, oh, this guy's smiling and laughing, and then it turned into laughing and joking behind that table. And then you play the actual video, and like that's just a quick moment in time that's like it looks like it's clearly to me that he's grimacing. And I can understand, you're seeing something shocking that you weren't expecting. So tell us a little bit about who Rick is, and I don't know how much. I'm sure you've talked with him multiple times, but give us some background on Rick.
And Rick is, I look at Rick and I'm like, and Rick and I are kind of strange. We share the exact same birthday, same year, same day, same month, and so he fared a little better on the hair game than I did, but and I look at him and I'm like, I need to be more like this guy. Past, present, and future. And so when those attacks started, I was like, of all the people. And then the people that attacked him, it's almost like some sociopath woke up that saw some woman on TV and just like, oh, she's my person. And these people just took to him.
Yeah, they did.
Rabid dogged, tore him up for no substantiable reason at all. And so, first of all, speak to Rick. And again, as a person, He's a phenomenal person.
How long have you known Rick?
Gosh, well over 20 years.
Wow.
And not just that, but Rick was a legendary police officer. You walk around Texas and ask about Rick Cutler, and a large amount of people, especially in the SWAT realm, know who Rick Cutler is, because he served with absolute distinction on what he did. And then he was also with the TTPOA as like training and making sure people got good training. And he's the reason why that I got good training. I benefited from his professionalism and dedication to community and state and craft. And so he did a career on that. And then, you know, when he retired, he's like, my service isn't done here. He went to South America and was an active part in rescuing sex-trafficked children and people that were held against their will at his own peril. He's like, in service of the Lord. You know, and that was a big thing for him. And Rick is one of our truly spiritual leaders. And so, I mean, he prays for us constantly. He's constantly putting prayers up for us. He's constantly putting biblical guidance up for us. Because, you know, it is the way. That's the only way. You know, he's trying to bring that truth and the light to us, especially in a time in a lot of darkness. And so you see, you know what he's been, you know what he's done, you know what he is doing, and then all of a sudden you see this atomic flash of evil. And here's my deal on that, for no reason, besides some sociopath out there wants to attack him. And then me personally, the weak part of me wants to be like, hey Rick, whose car are we going to take?
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, you know, just... You know, let's ask God what we should do about this, you know, and he's hurt by it, obviously, because he's a human being.
Sure.
But it's like the weak part of me wants to know whose car are we going to take.
Well, I mean, the fallout, and it's not just, you know, when you're accused wrongly, it's not just you know, it's your family, your kids that go through that. It's reputational destruction.
Grandkids.
People
that they're young, but they're old enough to hear, access, and see that stuff, but not old enough really to separate truth from reality.
Yeah.
How does that weigh on them?
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things. It's like and then I have to look at it logically from a psychological standpoint too. I'm not going to reason with that guy, because if he was reasonable, he wouldn't have put that up in the first place.
Sure.
You know, you go to hostage negotiation school, and one of the first things they tell you is don't try to reason with people doing unreasonable things. Yeah. And so it's like, I'm not going to call that guy up and try to hey man, he's unreasonable. That's why he's putting that up in the first place.
Right. And
it's evil stuff.
Yeah.
And so to that, I would say, I'm not going to give them any chatter. I'm not going to listen to it. I struggle with it, still struggle with it, but not as bad. And it was due to one incident where after Charlie was assassinated, our world was upside down. And I couldn't even get home for a long time. Got home, was home temporarily, boom, right back up there, trying to assist the family, the organization with anything they needed. You know, you're literally just like a sprinter waiting in the blocks. What can we do? And I remember I came home and I told my fiance, I got a really nice letter from a guy who heads the security at a church up called Denton Bible. And it was just like, man, we're praying for you. We know what you're going through. And Clint made sure to get me that. And so I was like, man, he didn't need to do that. He didn't need to do that, but it lifted me up. And so he made sure I got it. They hand delivered it. And so I got home and I said, hey, I want to go up to that church and tell them thank you. You know, I want to personally say thank you to these people for what they've done. So I'm sitting out in the service, and they didn't know I was coming. The pastor didn't know I was coming. And so we're sitting there, And he starts preaching, and he brings up the assassination and Erica's response and all this. And he said, he said, man, I don't know how many times we're told in the Bible to be still and trust in the Lord. And he starts quoting, just over. And so that kind of hit me. It's like, hey, it's bad now, but there's a process. And he knows what the process is, and it's not for us to question it. And so I was sitting there, and then that kind of tamped me down a little bit. And then he followed that up with, he said, when Christ was on the cross, I think it was his fifth saying, he said, "Forgive them, Father, because they don't know what they do." And so these people that are out there casting that stuff, that are chattering and spewing the lies, he said, "Forgive them, Father." And so I was like, oof. So that's me now. I'm like, forgive them, Father. They don't know what they do. Now, that we're not laydowns.
Yeah.
That's why we're in this industry.
Yeah.
That's why that's why you joined.
Well, I think it's also like, this is what Charlie did. When lies were being told, he got out there and forcefully and courageously told the truth. And yeah, we're going to get hit on this. You're going to get hit. People are going to take even this interview and twist it around. I've already seen what a great interview you did with Sean. And I've already seen people taking snippets of that and completely twisting that around. But I think our obligation as Americans, as Christians, as just trying to be good men, is get out there and tell the truth. And even when the truth's unpopular, even when the truth is detrimental to your mental, physical, whatever else, and that's what Charlie did. He knew the risks, and we'll definitely get into some of that stuff.
We're commanded to stand up and stand firm.
Absolutely.
But every year, the amount of people willing to do that gets smaller and smaller. Churchill said it best: never, and it was then, but it's now, never has so much depended on so few.
Yeah.
And we're there. And at some point, that breaks.
Yeah.
And then that's how Rome fell.
And look, they know the tactics for that. They're trying to shut truth down. The moment that you get out there and you're like, hey, look, this is the evidence, this is the logical assessment of this, it goes to personal character assassination, you're a Fed, you're paid by Israel, they want to shut you down. And, whether, I know for me, I know for you, and men like us, it's not gonna work. Matter of fact, all I do is use that for fuel. That means that I'm telling the truth. If you wanna shut me up, if you wanna attack me personally as opposed to argue what I'm saying and meet logic with logic, facts with facts, and have that discussion, have that discourse that between difference. And that's the other thing that's really disappointing. There are definitely many people on, look, I'm extremely conservative. I believe in the Constitution. I don't even want to, there's some elements of the conservative party or movement that I don't want to associate with. There's elements of the Republican Party I don't really, I'm all about this country and the Constitution. And, unfortunately, something like the assassination of Charlie, dying for his right to speak his mind and exchange ideas peacefully, somehow, instead of that being a come-together moment, it has been exploited to be something that's more fracturing than ever before.
That's purposeful, though.
Oh, I am very aware of that, yeah.
That is purposeful.
It is.
And, the Chinese philosophy is a death by 1,000 cuts. And that they know that.
Yeah.
We know that. Our military's practiced that since Vietnam, the World War II. We all know that. Yeah. It's just the level that they're doing it makes ours look like child's play.
Yeah.
And that's fine if they want to do it from over there. They're doing it here.
Yeah.
And that's something that's known. And it's like, hey, if our government knows that, why aren't they attacking it like they are the drug boats coming across, the Pacific?
Well, the Chinese have an agenda, and obviously lots of other foreign adversaries have an agenda, and even political elements, and ideological elements, and even elements within our government that clearly have no oversight, have an agenda. And I think
And they're a part of it.
Yeah.
Don't just.
Yeah.
They're a part of it.
Yeah. And I just don't, I think part of this is just sitting back and seeing what damage can be done. And it doesn't even have to make sense. It's definitely strategic and engineered, but they'll throw anything out. And right now people are just, kind of.
Yeah, and Charlie was a champion for that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know, but we've been with him for a while. And he started out as a pretty strong, independent.
Yeah.
And then moved more to the right through the years. But at the same time, he was a pretty equal basher of the right side.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And
that's our job, to point out corruption and things that are not right, regardless of affiliation. Like, we can't just protect our own when they're doing the things that
And one of the things that he bashed him for was non-action, empathy of non-action. Yeah. Like, hey, no, this is when you're to stand strong and firm in the Lord, and take this to people. This is the United States. This is not what United States was, and then we're going to let people do things here that are not American. And so why are we letting that happen? Why are we letting that? Why? And he was adamantly opposed to this, and I oppose it too. Why are we letting pockets and pieces of our country become where they came from?
I agree.
Hey man, you left there for a reason.
Yeah.
Don't come here and reinvent that piece that you left. And so I don't understand that. And historically, that's not what happened when this nation was built.
Right.
They came here and they called it the American dream for a reason.
Yeah.
They didn't call it, the Italian, German, English dream. And then, it was the melting pot that become America. And
we assimilated into something new.
absolutely.
And
If you look around the world, though, in other countries, that's the way it is.
Yeah. You don't really have a choice.
And there's a reason for that. We're proud people, and they're proud people. And so I think that at some point we need to start emulating other people and what they're doing. And then if our people won't do it, then we need to find some that will.
Yeah, no, I agree. You talked about being with Charlie for a long time. How long have you been?
2018, I think. I don't have the exact times,
Sure.
but we were working for another company. Pretty much a lot of the guys that are on it now were working for another company, and we were working for that company, that's how we garnered that contract. And so 8 years basically, and we've watched that organization grow into what it is now.
There was a rumor going around, and I never could find an answer to it, that actually Charlie owned the security company.
No, Turning Point's its own entity.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people we own that company. There's not a guy that doesn't work for our company that couldn't run it. I look at your stuff, and only you know the stuff that nobody thinks is cool, like the billing and the invoicing and the day-to-days and the compliance and the insurance and the taxes. And it's like, I wouldn't wish that on them.
Right.
I wouldn't wish that on them. But there's not a guy that doesn't work for me that couldn't step up and lead from the front. Now, we do not have one person that couldn't run this company. Not one. They can do it because, one, they wouldn't be there if they couldn't.
They're professionals.
And then at the same time, there's an overwhelming aspect, I guess you could say, when they come in. That's the way this is. If you don't get on the program that it's we and not you, you're not going to work. You're not going to be part of this team. And so, no, he didn't own any part of it. He didn't. He used Turning Point USA.
Yeah.
So.
There's a lot of misconceptions about corporate security, close protection, executive protection, whatever you want to call it. Let's talk a little bit about making sure that people understand the capabilities, the scope of what you do, what you can do, and kind of go through a little bit about, making sure that people have a clear understanding of what the expectations are of a close protection detail.
It is just that, PSD, close protection, whatever you want to call
Sure.
it. It's close, personal security detail.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and it's a lot of it's about prevention, making people non-accessible through movement, creating, we call it SEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. You design things so people can't get access to your guy, or if they do have access, they've been vetted. And so that's one of those things that you do. So you're responsible for the logistics, getting them in and out, into and safely out of that event, receiving them so you don't show up blind anywhere. You're always going from a known to a known. And so that's executive or personal protection, and then you have assigned areas, and in those areas, when you assign them out, you have to have statutory authority for. You can't just come in and make it. And it's hard because our team makeup is extremely professional, on that detail that we had, career SWAT officers, Navy SEAL, Marine, jiu-jitsu professor, globally renowned, former professional athlete, security guy. I mean, he just... And these guys have skills that are unbelievable because they're required.
Right.
And then the amount of, crap they eat because they can't go do what they've done previously or what they know they can do because, when that's not our job.
Yeah.
So they have to turn it over, and a lot of times you have to turn it over to people with lesser capability. And that's a hard one.
Yeah.
They understand, hey, this is what their tasking is, and so we do that on a regular basis, and it's that personal close security. And then you're tasked with little things that people don't even think of. It's like, hey, the way we but the way we speak to people that's appropriate, and then the way we look and the way we act and the way we even intermingle with each other because we know somebody's always watching, and so. We have to be cognizant of, we have to protect the reputation of our client, not just the physical part of it.
Yeah.
And so it's close protection, and generally it's private. And so the statutory authority for private security does not carry over from state to state.
Yeah.
It's different from state to state, and so that's why we relinquish through pre-meetings, through logistical management meetings, through area of responsibility assignments, to the people of local authority that have jurisdictional authority, and then we work on that together.
Yeah.
Similar to the way a police department or somebody works. Not everybody that works at the police department is a sworn officer, or the FBI that's an agent, because there's a commingling of those assets to make the big machine work. And that's a personal security detail right there, especially in a public event.
And, people need to understand, like, as far as if we go down whether you want to call it the chain of command or just the ascension of authority, like, you guys are right there at the bottom. When it comes to the venue, for instance, you can't just come into a venue and do whatever you want.
I saw that. It's like, they never should have been there in the first place. And I'm like, the security's not worth their weight in salt because they let them go there. Right. And I'm like, man.
Well, I'm even, you guys have to work with, whether it's UVU and whether they have, campus police or whatever else. Like, you guys have to work with them. You can't just tell a venue manager, we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah, I'd much rather been inside the stadium.
Yeah. Yeah.
In controlled access, but the school says, and look at it this way, that's why they created the amphitheater.
Yeah. For
venues type like that. And so we get told that, hey, this is where you have it, and because there's an aspect control. And don't forget, this was a student activity, and that's where the students gather. And so we don't have that to say over that. That's where they say we do it.
Yeah.
And or where the permit allowed. And to speak to that, Charlie liked that. He liked that openness of it because that allowed people of dissenting views to come in and exchange information with. And so that wasn't something under our control. We just are given that, and then we work around it. We do the best we can for it.
And corporate security is very unique in that you guys don't have veto power over the client. The client is, well, I'll let you explain that relationship with the boss. Like, you can't just go, a lot of people said, come in there and say, well, you know what, I don't like this venue, Charlie, we're not doing it.
Right.
What would happen to you
That
if you did that with
about
any?
that long,
Yeah.
And here's the way that works too. You reserve that when something pops up. It's like, hey, and there's not discussion then. You grab the back of their head and you push them out against their will if necessary. And so you reserve that to when it's absolutely articulable, needed, justifiable. And so that the way there's no question to it. But if you did that every time, this is me, if we did that every time, I would be like, no, we're staying here in this room and we're only letting people come through mags, and I'm going to strip search you, and then you're going to come in a swimsuit and talk to him if that's the way I would have wanted to run something. But since that's not real or reality, we have to do what they tell us to do from every level down.
Right.
Our input is the last input, and that input comes from what we're seeing in real time. And so if we have to step up and override every piece of input that came through us, through them to get to us, it better be a reason that you're willing to bet that entire job on. And that's every day.
Yeah.
Every single day.
And with executive protection, or really with any corporate protection, and this really goes into even government. I've seen this, when you're dealing with dignitaries and ambassadors, they're going to do things that is unsafe, that you would highly advise against.
Oh, absolutely.
And your job is they're going to do it. Your job is to try to make it as safe as possible, even though potentially, I'm not saying this with Charlie, but I'm just saying this is the environment, that even though that person and that decision is putting not only them at risk, but other people at risk, your job is to get out there and ready to eat bullets if you have to.
And that was a risk that we knew. We brought that on. It's like, and especially when we had guys that transition in from the military or whatever, and they're like, "This is insane. We need to call this off, or do a call off here and move because these 3,000 people in front of us aren't vetted." And I'm like, it's not an option. It's not an option for us. We had to be able to articulate that down to 100% certainty before that could happen. Otherwise, that's a no-go. And so it's not something under our control.
Yeah.
I wish it was.
Yeah. All right. The other thing I want to ask you about, or at least make people understand, the limitations of the capabilities of PSD.
Yeah.
Like, there are some things that you guys do not have the power, the resources to mitigate, deter, or even detect. Like, if someone decides to fly a plane into your client out of the sky, you can't, I don't want to say that, it's almost too ridiculous. There's definitely some things that, given the scope of your capabilities, the manpower that you have, there's some things that you just can't mitigate, deter, or detect. And being a close protection, long distance threats are a challenge, especially when you have a large crowd in there. People expect you to have this counter sniper team, and that's not within your scope. Now, if a client asks, hey, I want a close protection team and I want a counter sniper team, those additional resources, advanced specialized training, those things cost money. Did TPUSA, were they ever asking for that level of capabilities from you guys?
No, because, it was nice because TPUSA had their asset management director, Dan. And so Dan knew the capabilities. And so Dan would never come in and go, hey, could you guys go and set up an observation point with sniper capability, sniper observer, because he knew that would be outside the statutory authority and capability.
Right.
So you wouldn't ask something that you couldn't do. And I have other clients ask us all the time to do things that we can't do.
Yeah.
And I have to tell them, hey, we can't do that.
And they never even came to you and said, hey, look, we would just want like 5-6 guys that are just dedicated, because that's the thing that people don't realize. When you have a crowd in front of you, yeah, you're going to scan the rooftops, but like you can't do all things well.
Yeah, and I can kind of build that out for you, if you will. People started, let's just start with we had the site.
Yep.
Like, why did they pick the site? And it's like, okay, well, that's not our option.
Right.
And whether from the college or from the client.
Right.
We danced with what brung us, and that was that. And so, and then it's like, why didn't you have drones? So let's start with that. I mean, I know that you have your own experience with the college and the drones.
I do.
And I mean, from what you said, you had to worry almost a little bit about getting arrested.
Well, what I said specifically was I wasn't going to have that argument because they don't, just so people understand, when I went out to UVU, I went out there to get a 3D scan, and that required, we had a specialized surveying drone that did exactly that. And we launched that drone from basically right on the top of the roof, right on the walkway portion before you jump over the rail where the alleged shooting position was. We started our scan. I walked downstairs. I was going to go, I had a professional drone surveyor with drone license, all the stuff. He already had cleared everything with the FAA. Everything was good to go. Our paperwork was good, all this stuff. So I was walking back down the stairs, and a law enforcement officer approached me and said, "Hey, is that your drone?" I said, "Yes, it is." He's like, "I need you guys to bring that down." I was like, "Listen, man, that's FAA airspace. Like, you don't really have the authority to do that." He's like, "Well, the UVU has a policy against drones, and you got to get it cleared through them." I was like, "Policy's not law." He was very professional, very nice. I was pushing back, and he's like, "Yeah, that's, you have to get permission from them." And I was like, "Man, that's not really how that works." I was like, "Listen, I have a professional drone pilot up there. It's his drone. Go talk to him." And, they went up there, and long story short, number one, we could be perfectly in the right, and I wasn't going to push back because I also think, number one, it's public space. That is a public university. That is FAA airspace. I think that's a First Amendment violation, amongst other things. So we could have played that out and ended up in handcuffs, and later on figured out we were right. Like, oh yeah, after 6 years in a Supreme Court case, we might have won, right?
Hundreds of thousands of
dollars. There's probably a more expeditious way of going about that. So we tried to play their game, and they wanted us to fill out paperwork and apply for this and doing this. And we had 1 day to be there. Even if we extended our time there, we had a good weather window that was closing in on us. So long story short, we just went off campus and ended up flying that drone. So they clearly believe that they have authority to do that. And that's the other thing too, like there's laws on the books, and then there's this new thing, UAVs. And a lot of people don't, law enforcement sure isn't getting training. Like a lot of people think that you can shoot a drone above your property. They're on my property. Brother, that's FAA airspace. That's a federal offense if you shoot that drone.
We saw that. These guys could have ended tragedy if they had bought a $300 drone. And it's like, I spent thousands of dollars out of my own pocket last year for drones for the guys.
Yeah.
And they got licensed, but I still can't go in and break the rules. And then that's primarily. And secondarily, you have to understand, that's the PD's job.
Yeah.
That's their assignment. That's their job. That's their statutory authority. They can operate. That's their job. That's not a private security PSD around the bubbles job. And so what is it? If it were up to me, 100%, I'd have had our guy there with the drone and the capability to do it. But again, if that's your job and that's your assignment, then do it. Or don't harass people that are doing it. Yeah. And so that's an easy one. And we had the same Overwatch.
And you all did talk to UVU and Orem Police or campus police, because there is even when I was there, because I can tell you all the law enforcement there, which was probably, there's probably 8 to 10 officers on campus while I was there. This is weeks after Charlie was killed. So they had security there, but I didn't see they were all Orem.
More than they had the day of.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt. And by the way, they all actually knew who I was. And we were there. I was there with Gray Hughes, Stephen Gardner, I told them I was going. Stephen Gardner is another, for people that don't know, another YouTuber. I told Gray Hughes I was going. He's like, I was thinking about going. So, we ended up meeting up and linking up, and it was great to meet these guys in person. But the point is, they knew who we were. They were watching us. Every time we turned around, they were waiting for us to do something. And I made contact with them, tried to build some rapport, and like, hey, I'm not here to break rules. As a matter of fact, I sent UVU multiple emails trying to coordinate this visit, and I tried calling, and I got crickets. So I was trying to, head this up and make sure that hey, what are your rules as far as drones? And anyways, long story short, what I'm asking you, there is UVU campus police, correct?
Correct.
And then there's Orem.
Orem PD, and
Yep.
and I talked to some Orem guys afterwards, and I'll be first to tell you that Orem PD was, after the incident, an unbelievable help in areas that I can't disclose for non-disclosure reasons. But some of the things that they did for us to help us is well beyond the scope of
Post-event.
Post-event, unbelievable. Like personal things and attributions and follow-ups and, hey guys, how's your mental health? These are men that care.
Yeah.
And that cared then and care now, men and women. And so it's like, man, some of the things they did. And so I asked one of them, you guys have drones? And they're like, yeah. And so I said, they said they're very active. He's explaining it, drone unit, they're proactive usage of them. And I said, you have an MOU or a mutual aid agreement with the school? And obviously they did, because they showed up and they were there when you were there.
Now, was this discussion?
Same night.
Okay.
Same night.
So still after he was killed.
Afterwards,
Yeah.
And they were like, yep, we got it. And I was like, man, and I mean, that's something for listeners, and go do a FOIA and to either UVU or Orem and say, hey, was there an official request ever made for a mutual aid agreement or an MOU assistance, the use of the drone? And if so, why not? And it just, I get it. It's the path of least resistance to blame the security team, but I don't think people understand that scope of work, assignments, capability, that our statutory authority, and you saw it firsthand. And so I have guys that could have done that. And so, and then the same goes for sniper or observer. It's like, if I would have, our guys have been trained their whole careers.
Right.
That's part of what they can do. And so if I were to show up with my guys and went up and fold out the tripods and put the stuff out and started glassing, they'd went to jail.
Yeah.
We'd have put hardship, it would have scrambled people. They'd have put hardship and negativity against the Turning Point brand.
Sure.
That's not things we can do. There are people that can do that, though, that have statutory authority. Again, it falls back to that UVU says, hey, we only have 6 people that they gave us.
Yeah.
Okay, Orem, do they have people capable? They have a SWAT team with that? Do you have a mutual aid agreement? If something bad happens at the school, who comes and who shows up? Well, we all saw.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you'll take them when it happens bad, but you won't take them when you just need to ask.
Yeah.
And so here's my question to the people that didn't do that. Did you intentionally not call them? With indifference, did you not call them? Why? Did you intentionally say, nah? And is there a bad relationship there that we're not aware of? Is there history? I don't know.
I think, there's always a little bit of, I'm sure they've had hundreds of events there, and, nothing's happened until something happens.
I get
think
that too.
There's always, complacency isn't always a factor in some of these issues. And sometimes it's just like, yeah, we can talk about President Trump, who's a politician and former president, and there's a precedent, and then going back, I'm sure there's some other ones, but just off the top of my head, Martin Luther King. But this is not a I don't even want to call someone a sniper. I hate giving them that level of expertise. A person shooting from afar, a murderer shooting from afar. Number one, it's extremely hard to mitigate. It's hard to detect, and again, if the client doesn't address that and ask, because you guys, as with all security, you kind of got a menu of options of what you can provide the client and what they're willing to pay for. And
what you can do by the law.
Yeah, what you can do legally.
Right.
What the venue wants you to do, and you can't sit there and, you know, start demanding things from UVU or Orem Police, because again, it goes back to you not only are physically protecting clients, but you are also protecting their reputations. And
yeah,
I think
I don't understand that. You know, again, I get back to, do you intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence fail to provide what you said you were going to provide? And we can get into that.
Yeah.
We had concerns.
Yeah.
And I think I sent you the text.
You did.
And
I'll make sure we put that up. Yeah, so you definitely voiced those concerns out there. There was a little bit of ambiguity, I think, in that text, and I don't know if there was additional discussions with, you talk a little bit about, hey, the overhead right above Charlie, and then rooftops are mentioned.
So what we, and that's a great point. So we were speaking to the rooftops solely because we didn't know about the overhead threat problems of that walkway and the rocks and something being thrown down on us until the morning of, because that's why. But that's why we go out and walk it.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, we go out and physically build that stuff and walk it. And so that, we didn't know about those, you know, fist-sized rocks that they used as architectural design. So, but that's when we're like, oof. So, you know, that happened Wednesday morning of, when we found out about that and had to scramble and redo. But
and just to clarify, so you guys obviously knew about the walkway above where Charlie was, but you didn't know about the rocks.
the ability to just heave down stuff,
Yeah.
and you know, that was accessible to that point. I mean, it would have been bad and dangerous. And so the Monday when we asked that chief and he responded about rooftops, we were talking about the rooftops.
Right, Lossy Building,
Right.
Sorensen Center.
Yeah, and so in the ease of access. And so the one right behind the tent and how that was going to be easy was certainly something that came up that morning. And so that was when, and we made it work.
Fair enough. What was your communication with TPUSA and I guess Charlie like? Did you go through, you know, was Dan Flood your mediator? Is that how it kind of worked?
And so if people knew how much, and we do a lot of these stops, but how much background goes into it before we get there.
Sure.
You know, it starts months sometimes before with requisite or the request by student group, and then they, you know, Turning Point has to produce COI and plans.
Tell
and,
people what COI is.
certificate of insurance. Yeah.
That's important because, quite frankly, people don't realize this. The insurance policies dictate what has to be there.
Sure.
And those are based off of probabilities and like, hey, this is a student event, this is a debate, this is so they go through there and they make calculations. Hey, we need this, this, and this, and this, and this. You know, fire extinguishers, safety protocols. Like a lot of that stuff is actually, I mean, it's obviously a security concern, but a lot of it, what has to be there, and kind of to some extent, what is not there is a little bit dictated by insurance, and there's some guidelines that people go off, even security folks go off of based on those.
We do. So that starts getting built up, and then interest, another one. What's the and so all that starts feeding into, and we created this form years ago that it has it, so we can put that out to the student group beforehand. It's like, hey, are weapons allowed on campus? Does this is there a adjacent free speech area? Who's the statutory authority? Who's the point of contact? Is a permit required? Can we have amplified sound? The closest hospital? You know, all those are in that workup form, and so we start working that stuff up, and that's backhand knowledge that we do well before that happens, well before what goes on. And so that's starting to garner, and I want us to think that, and then we create, for the security team, we create a page on an app that we use, and the guys that are on that job get to see that stuff come in real time. And then they can comment, add to it, and then so we kind of practice the decentralized command model where every guy can make a decision based upon the betterment of the detail or the team or the client. And so that comes in, and so the amount of background that comes into that is phenomenal. And then you start conference calls and individual calls, and then we may have a conference call with the whole school, and about the event itself, and everything's in there from ticketing to police functions to how people are going to get there, where we have to be, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of background that goes into preparing for an event like that.
Once you guys start doing that threat matrix or risk matrix and going through that, when you have concerns or other team members have concerns that you want to bring to TPUSA, is that normally going through Dan Flood? Do you communicate that
Correct.
directly?
And
who
so
makes those command decisions from their level?
Yeah, and so in Dan's at that level where he's kind of like the guy that tells us what to do. We're the security contractor.
He's like basically a security manager.
Yeah, and so and then on that one, because of the global temperature of the globe, the environment right now, because of the proposed or the possible people. We don't know how many people it's going to come up, because it's like, I wanted to tell somebody, and it's kind of aging me, but U2 did a video back in the 90s in downtown LA where, I don't know if you remember, they just rolled in on the back of a truck, and next thing you know, 10,000 people were there. Wow. And so an event like this is similar to that.
Right.
There's not ticketing.
Yeah.
There's not, it could start out at 1,000 people, and then the chatter gets out, but here's this one. People knew weeks in advance for this. So people were driving in from all over the nation to come to this event.
Yeah.
And it's not ticketed, so we don't know. There could be anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000, and I think that day there were over 3,000 people that showed up, and that little courtyard that you can see on video, it was pretty much at its capacity.
Yeah.
And that was a worry for us.
And with overflow up and, on different levels. That's a really unique terrain. Just standing there, it's like, man, there's just so many different levels. It's like multifaceted. Like, it's a
from a tactician standpoint.
Challenge.
From a tactician standpoint, if in your world where you came from, and if your objective is over there, and you walked up to that, you'd be like, negative.
Yeah.
No, we're covered from 180 degrees from elevation. This is a hard negative.
Exposed to windows and everything else like. And
so I say, hey, the people that are out there screaming that we could have done better on that is if that were my choice, absolutely, you're correct. If that were my choice.
Yeah.
If that were our choice.
TPUSA and Charlie had made a decision to do that event in that location.
But there's a reason for that, and it kind of bodes to Charlie's character. Is we also, in conjunction with the Change My Minds or those events, they do the nighttime stuff also. Mm-hmm. And the nighttime ones are ticketed because that's a fire code capacity. And then you look at opposing view people, and opposing view people don't go to those anywhere near the numbers as they did the outside events, not even close. And he knew that. And then his goal the whole time, and he said it, these aren't my words, these are his, they're out there, sure, was to bring opposing view people together to have conversation so that we don't have discourse. Yeah. And it's like, what better way to do it than come on in? And I'll substantiate that by saying, you ask anybody out there, Turning Point or anybody that has gone, the people that had opposing views always got to come to the front of the line. Yeah. They didn't even have to wait in line. Yeah. They got to walk up to the front.
And quite frankly, that's those debates and discussions were what got views, mm-hmm, and were what spread his message of, hey, I disagree with you completely on every level, but I'm going to have a respectful, logical, substantive conversation. I'm not going to call you names. I'm not going to respond if you call me names. And that is how to approach that. And
you have to look at both sides too. And I hear people all the time admit it. It's like, hey, people were there to watch the train wreck too. Mm-hmm. You'd have those people come up and they're just absolute train wrecks. Yeah. And sometimes it was hard for me not to look over at them and go, I have to put eyeballs on the stupidity coming out of this mouth. Yeah. And that got views also.
Yeah. And there were definitely people there to provoke and
absolutely
to disrupt.
And that got views. And
Yeah.
so we had to plan to that. And so that day, because of the temperature of the world, because of the environment, we brought extra people. You know, we didn't just say, you know, this has been good enough. Nothing's ever happened before.
Right.
We increased our manpower by like 25%. And so we brought extra people for that, just in case. And we utilized those people and ended up utilizing those people for a proactive and preemptive to make the scene safer in our area of responsibility.
Yeah.
And so
I got some questions
Sure.
specific to that. But you know, when you gave security recommendations, whether it was directly to Charlie, whether it was to Dan Flood or TPUSA, how were those typically received? Were they receptive to those?
yeah, I mean, a lot of people forget that you know, Charlie just wasn't an employer. He was a friend of ours too.
Right.
And just as if we went out to an unknown, I'm going to do the best I can to protect you because you're a friend, or you know, even or whoever I'm with. And so we had a vested personal interest in this also.
Sure.
And so, but it also had to be within capability. But I would run that up to Dan and say, hey, you know, and then Dan may run it up to him. I don't know the conversations they had, and it would come back down. Yeah, they were receptive, but if not so receptive that we wouldn't do an event outside in a bowl.
Sure.
I mean, we've had conversations before about it getting too dangerous to have stuff outside.
Yeah.
And I know those conversations have gone top to bottom, bottom to top.
Yeah.
And then you substantiate that by saying, well, after the assassination, all the outside events went away. And we only did inside events after that.
You said you plussed up the security detail for that event. You said it was mainly due to the political climate, and you know, obviously more staff means more expenses for TPUSA. Mm-hmm. Who made that decision and who approved that? Was that your decision and recommendation, or was that requested by Charlie or someone at TPUSA, Dan Flood? Where did that come from? Who approved it? Yeah.
You know, we talk about that before every event, mm-hmm. and it's laborious. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not the cool guy stuff. Everybody thinks that, you know, all you do is show up and look cool, and it's not that at all. And so we talk about that prior to the event about, man, this is an outside venue. It's Utah. People are going to be carrying guns right in front of us. Mm-hmm. It's illegal. There's only certain things we can do. We need eyes for this area of responsibility because of the amount of people that are coming in. And so I don't remember the conversation that Dan and I had, but I was like, hey, you know, we should probably up this. And then you know, Dan, I don't know what his SOPs are.
So basically you gave Dan a recommendation of security staffing numbers, and then he came back and said,
Dan's a smart guy too, though. He sees this, and so there's no doubt in my mind that if I'd asked for 5 more guys and the ability to articulate it, he would have said yes.
Got it.
Yeah, you know, obviously we have to start getting within reason because we don't want to look like a Middle Eastern PSD where they just put 80 guys around their guy, you know. And so it has to be within reason, it has to be articulable that we're not only good with their safety and their reputation, but we're good with the money that they're spending too.
Right.
That we're not out there looking like they're grifting. We're trying to, you know, take money from them.
Yeah, and just so everybody's clear on that too, is for people that don't know, Dan Flood was the head of security essentially for TPUSA, mm-hmm. and he did not work for your
I think his title is like asset manager, and then Dan's who we answer to. Right. He's the one that gives us direction, gives us scheduling, tells us what to do. We submit things to him, requests, invoices, and so that's the up-down chain, if you will.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's some confusion about that. You know, Dan Flood doesn't work for you. He's not part of your company.
But he's registered with our company.
Sure.
Dan came from our company.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, he came from us. And when we worked for that other company, Dan's one of those guys that he has a hard set, but he sees what a client needs almost before the client thinks they need. Sure. I mean, he has that ability to think forward, and Charlie recognized that. and recognized that because I recognized that. And before, when we were working for that other company, I said, hey, Dan, you're with Charlie. Because that's where you put your assets where they're valuable and where they can be valuable to the client, to the team. And Dan was always on Charlie. And then Charlie recognized that, and then Charlie's like, I want you to come work for me. And Dan went to work for Turning Point.
Yeah.
So it was a loss for us, but it was a gain for them, and so that's the way that worked.
Good. Based on text messages that were ultimately confirmed by Andrew Covelt, as well as an overall sentiment that the climate that felt there was additional risk. Charlie felt like there was an additional risk, or at least there was discussions going on in the background. I know you kind of addressed this a little bit with Sean, and I'm trying to avoid any redundant questions, but outside of just your perception of the political climate and what was going on in this country and other places, was there prior to those events, because as I understand it, those text messages were like a few days prior to UVU, was there any specific additional threats that were articulated to you from Dan Flood or any other TPUSA staff?
No, just that one. We had concerns about the roofs.
Yeah.
And those were legitimate concerns. And so we brought that to the chief of police the Monday before. Mm-hmm. And it was brought to them in a format, and people, it's like, well, why did you use text messages? Because they're there.
Yeah.
Man, it's not a phone call, because then it's a he said, she said.
Yeah.
It's that text message in real time, and it's his number.
Do you feel like there was any ambiguity as far as what you were trying to relate to the chief of police and what he thought his role, or what you wanted out of him? You think there was any ambiguity there, or you feel like that was made pretty clear?
That text message came from Dan, not from me.
Okay.
And then that came down from Dan to me.
Gotcha.
So
that was not a text message between you and the chief of police. That was the text message between Dan and the chief of police. That's interesting.
And then it comes down, and then it was and the reason why it was addressed between Dan and I is because I have concerns.
Yeah.
And then so my concerns are vetted and met by saying, hey, I got you covered.
And the conversation between you and Dan Flood, or Dan Flood to you, was, hey, UVU police are going to take care of the roofs.
Mm-hmm. And so, and again, this is not after the fact, whatever. This
right.
is, and Dan did his job.
Yeah.
And then I have concern, and Dan says, all right, no, I've got this covered. And so I'm like, all right, Dan did his job. I'm doing my job. Dan did his job. Chief said he's going to do his job.
Now, are you aware of any other correspondence, whether that was in person, on the phone, email, between either you, Dan, TPUSA, to the chief of police, or UVU?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there are some circumstances where if Dan's not available to do those, then I would step in and act in lieu of him and meet with public officials, school officials. Historically, we've done that, but most of the time, similar to the military, that's disseminated down like a chain of command.
Sure.
And that's the way we got it.
Okay. I know, as someone that's very security minded, our backgrounds and the way that we look at the world is very different from the way that a lot of other people look at the world. We're always, my wife is always friends that weren't in the military. They're very aware that, like, hey, Gary, why don't you calm down?
Right,
it's like, you're always, you don't even think, it's completely subconscious, but you're always scanning. When I go to a restaurant, I like to make sure I find, or anywhere I'm going, I want to be able to see the door.
I made you sit with your back to the door last
night.
No,
that's
I knew
okay.
It was killing you.
No,
I knew it was killing you.
I always like to have my wife right there. That way I have good ballistic protection. Just but we see the world through a different lens. Do you think that Charlie really understood the risks when he was out there in public?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah.
Again, we had conversations about the risk before, and he was keenly aware of it. And I've seen some chatter back and forth from him and other people where he said, he had questions or concerns about his safety. Mm-hmm. And, I don't think it's fair to me to comment about those because I wasn't part of it.
Sure.
I just saw it on the internet, like everybody else. And so, but yeah, he's manifested those things to me before and to people on the security team. And again, you would be silly not to. We think about it, and I'm just some Joe.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but he's a guy that routinely got death threats.
Yeah.
And bomb threats. And so it was on his radar because it was part of his life. I mean, I've heard conversations before on the phone where people had said stuff about, you know, aren't you worried about his security, to me, you know, or people said something to me, and I'm like, yeah, of course I am. You know, that's why we're out there we're not mailing this in. And that's a big thing with our guys, and you can ask them, you know, and that's why I gave you their backgrounds and their phone numbers, which is a no-no. You know, I said, don't believe me. Don't take what I'm saying for face value. Call these guys and ask them how we run this show.
And I just want to extend an invitation to, you know, any of your guys, you know, if they want to come and talk privately or publicly, you know, I want to make sure that your guys, I think it's the only fair thing to do, is to hear your side of the story, so that this, what is clearly a large part just pure fiction, at least there's that juxtaposition between, okay, here's what people are saying and here's what people on the ground are saying. And I think that, you know, that's important.
I think you asked those guys, and this came from, this is something that's passed down to my parents and expectations of people that I work with and for, is we have this big sign underneath the awning at one of the lower ranges at our range, and it says good enough, and it says comma isn't. A lot of those guys came from the environment of it's good enough for government work.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's hard to break guys of, and they don't make it because of that.
Right.
And so good enough isn't. And so to get in there and know that that effort has to be put in, and the way we talk about it is, nobody, and that's why we train so hard. Right. I mean, our training is, I mean, it's not uncommon. Guys get broken. We've had guys physically tear the muscles off of their bones from putting out individual effort. Not during the DT section, like trying so hard, they pop it off their bones. Yeah. That's how much effort they put out, because that's how much effort is expected in training. And the reason for that is, nobody's ever said, you know, there I am in a fight for my life, putting out a half-ass effort.
Right.
And so why would we put out that effort when we're trying to push ourselves to be the best we can be? And then guys that come, we've had guys that come in and they want to be part of the team, and then they see what they have to do to get the approval for it, and they're like, nah, I'm good, man. Right. I'm good, I've done that already.
You're intentionally recruiting and creating an environment of high performers. High performers.
And you know what's funny? Most of the people that come in, did get vouched in, they are high performers. For some of them, it's just another day at the office. Yeah. And we create that culture. And then there's competitiveness. You came from that world.
Yeah.
I don't care if we're sitting down. It's a competition. And then we're going to give each other a hard time, to the point of, we do these training iterations all the time. And if it's like, hey, if you finish last place, everybody else has to carry you to the next iteration, physically carry you. And so you let that team down. You let us down by being last place, so you're going to be carried to the next one. That way we're showing, man, I don't want to lay there. I don't want to be the one being carried.
There's consequences.
To everything.
Yep.
Everything's timed. Everything's measured.
That's something that's missing from this world. Everybody gets a trophy. There's no consequences. And
we give out a trophy. We do internal competitions all the time in our group, whether it's shooting and it has PT involved. And we gave out a trophy one year for the last place guy that said didn't shoot himself but should have. You know, that's how business-like we are.
Right.
And then we also have a coin that we give out at whoever finishes first every year, and if you lose it, you have to pass it to the next guy. And on the coin it says memento mori. It says, you may be first place, but remember, you are mortal. And we do that too. And so we're trying to build that humility along with that excellence.
Yeah.
And so that's something that when I tell people our team is tight.
Yeah, you know, coming from special operations and things like that, there is an element of the top performers never feeling enough. And I think that, you know, that's a certain level of humility. Sometimes it's an insecurity, but I think that's what keeps you driving forward. And even if you can beat everybody on the team, you're now competing against yourself. What can I do better?
I've studied that a lot, as far as, because I literally, and it's kind of a progression of growing old. I mean, I feel like a hypocrite now because I'm out there expecting those guys to do things that I can no longer do.
Sure.
It drives me.
Yeah.
It crushes me. And I remember seeing that in my dad. Like, man, my dad was an absolute phenomenal police officer, renowned as a state trooper. But I saw it in his face, like, you don't want people when you get older to see you as being less dangerous.
Right.
Yeah. And so it crushes me that I'm sitting there. I feel like a hypocrite when I'm telling these guys, push it harder. And every year I finish lower and lower and lower down the pack. I'm still out there.
Right.
But, and so I feel horrible about that. But at the same time,
I think that's the natural role of an experienced mentoring coach, right? It's like even Olympic athletes or professional athletes, they have coaches that sit there and push them harder, and those coaches probably never were at the same performance level of those, but you can see some things, and it's tough to, my son, he's so proud that now he's like a quarter of an inch taller than me. He's 15, and it's like there's a little bit of me like, oh, now I'm getting measured, I'm up on my tippy toes, but there's a time to know when to hand off that torch and when to step back and manage, and it's a tough pill.
And a lot, and I'll be honest, a lot of these guys came in better. On my best day, they were better than me. They're better than me now, and they would have been better than me then. We have guys I have some guys that do medical that are so phenomenal. I'm like, man, why are you not an ER doc?
Right.
And then I have guys that can shoot. That it's like, man, on my best years, days, months, weeks, minutes of shooting, I never was as good as you, and never will be.
Yeah.
And we have guys that I could sit there and drink 15 cups of coffee and have Eye of the Tiger blasting and get on the match with them, and they're going to tap me in the first 30 seconds. Yeah. And so I get that, and what we train, we still all train to that, and we all have that humility, and so our team breeds that, and our guys breed that, but at the same time, we never lose the aspect that we're there for each other. And so that's a good one.
No,
have we had spiffs? Oh, of course. Yeah. We're a family.
Sure.
And so our families have spiffs. But it's like, hey, we have a sand pit at our training facility. It's bang bags. And it's like, hey, man, if you want to settle it up, just go get in the pit.
Yeah, there needs to be more of that. So you were with Charlie about 7.5, 8 years, somewhere in there. How many of these types of campus events have you personally been a part of or helped plan or basically are aware of during that time? What on average do you think these type of events was he doing per year?
I think the outside events, 6, 7, and then now I think last time we had like 22 stops. That's speculation. I'd have to go back and look at it. But and they've been progressing. I mean, we literally started out doing it, and that's why I don't have hair, with a card table and a chair, and us standing there, and people were up there in conversational distance screaming, and I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
That's the way this all started. And then as they grew, our security footprint grew commensurate to the threat. We didn't just rest on our laurels. We started incorporating, more people, bike racks, SEPTED, car blocks, more police personnel. I will tell you, and this was before the assassination, and it was a hit and miss with schools. You'd go to some schools, and they were like, nah, we're not helping. We don't want to have an affiliation. I mean, literally, and you're out there by yourself. But you look at some of the Florida schools. They went out there, this was pre-assassination.
Right.
These guys were textbooking it, and they're smart because they're using it as training as well.
Right.
And so they're
talking
out,
about the local law enforcement.
Yeah, it's like, man, we have Florida Highway Patrol. FSU. We have the colleges, the Florida colleges out there. We have the SO. We have Homeland, and so we're doing a meet debrief. Beforehand, we're discussing area of responsibility. Hey, we got so all that, and it's like, this is the way it should be done. I can't make them do that.
Right.
We didn't have that at UVU.
So given the political climate, and clearly there was some discussion within TPUSA about additional threats or concerns, why do you think it was that Charlie was it discussed about Charlie wearing body armor? The other discussion was that I'd like to know about is having some sort of bulletproof barrier. I feel like I know the answers to some of those because you even talked about how you guys would form kind of a channelized area for speakers with bike racks, basically a rope line. And then Charlie wanted a section open so there was nothing in between.
Yeah.
So speak to that.
So I'll speak to the body armor first.
Okay.
You know, I can't speak to the conversation that either Dan or whoever at Turning Point had with Charlie about body armor.
Sure.
You know, if it'd been up to me, yeah, man, we'd had ceramic plates and all that, but
not that I don't even think that would have been relevant, and obviously with
obviously it
circumstances.
wasn't. But there are people that, I mean, that made the internet, and then why didn't he have this? And I was like, well, I can't make him do that, all right? And would I wanted it? Of course I would have wanted it, but you know, obviously he didn't have it on, and just from you can see, and so and he didn't wear it, and so that's the first one. Would I have wanted it? Of course. Are there leaders that wear that or speakers that wear that? Sure they are. We see people that show up wearing body armor. That's not something that we point out, but if they choose to wear that individually, that is their choice.
Right.
If we can make recommendations for it and they want to take it, that's theirs, you know. And so that's them. Can we help get it for them if they want it? Of course. We'll do whatever they want. And so that's the body armor issue. The screen. Yeah, you know, a ballistic screen would have been nice, but, and this is just me speculating, one, I don't think Charlie would have ever allowed it. And there's a reason why I'm substantiating my thought on that, is because he wouldn't even let us, didn't want, if you'll notice when we did those hard bike racks, you know, presidential style bike racks, there was a gap left where the microphone was. That was purposeful. He wanted to make sure people to visually see that there's nothing between him and them. And I had to, and you'll also see on the videos, I had to man that.
Right.
So that one guy was on each side of that gap, and those guys
And that was a non-negotiable for Charlie.
for me, yeah, I mean, no, it was not. I mean, we could have easily put the microphone on the other side. Yeah. But it was one of those things that, no, that's what he wanted. He wanted to physically be able to see that. The reason why he also was elevated is because he wanted to make sure that the people, because if he's not elevated, the people can't see him.
Yeah.
And so I don't even remember that came in, but that was a request. Okay, I want to be up here so the people that are 2,000 people back can see him.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, this is horrible.
Right.
You know, this is horrible. But that's how much he cared about people wanting to hear and see his message, that we left that gap. And then what can I do on that? Well, I put a guy next to him, right next to him up there, and then I put two guys in that gap that are capable of prevention and keeping people out at epic levels. And so, yeah, there's a reason why there was a gap there.
Out of all the events that you'd been to, what percentage would you say was outside?
Well, oh gosh, I'd have to look at, but a lot. I mean, the Change Your Minds were all outside up until he was assassinated, and then they went away from that style and went inside.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were all outside, and we've done them.
I couldn't find. Again, I've been following Charlie for years and years, and I couldn't find an indoor version of that because, again, one of the things that's been being perpetuated on the internet was UVU wanted it to be inside, and you know, the insinuation under the underlying accusation under there is that the security team basically vetoed everything. Like, no, we're going to be outside.
I think they think that we have more say in that. That's one.
Clearly.
And then two, if the school didn't want it outside, why'd they issue the permit?
Yeah, I haven't been able to find anything that substantiates even that claim, but much less, obviously, what I do know is that the Sorensen building does have an indoor venue. It's limited to about 1,000 people, but more importantly, everything that I've ever looked at, Charlie clearly wanted these outside events. That seemed to be something that he preferred, and obviously he's the client. He's going to make that decision. And matter of fact, I'm sure you guys don't really have a say in it.
We get told. We get told.
Yeah.
Similar. I mean, we get told, hey, this is where we're having it, and then we go to work making our area of responsibility as safe as possible.
Out of all the events that you've been to, did you feel like this venue was different from a security aspect?
Oh, we've had way worse, way worse. We went to University, California, or San Francisco, and we had it kind of on a. It was some kind of athletic field, and there was a fence around it where there were so many protesters. They did a street takeover outside of it, and were protesting with bands, and we had unauthorized drones flying around, and PD was around us. We had primary, secondary exfil locations compromised. I mean, and I'm like, this is, and I remember looking at one of my guys and saying, this is bad. This is bad.
Where would you rank this? Like, as far as a security threat, this particular venue, out of all the ones that you did, you know, was it in the top 50? Was it in the lower, like, you know, hindsight and looking at the event without knowing what would happen? I don't know, kind of like, where would you rank that particular venue?
Yeah, I would look at, you know, it wasn't good, mainly because, again, you look at the way it's like we were setting ducks down there, right? And
it was easy to predict where you were going to be, where Charlie was going to be.
It was announced, and so that's part and parcel as to why we were concerned about rooftops and rooftop accesses, and why we asked that to be, you know, looked after by the chief. And so I would put it at something that had risk, but we've done worse. We've done worse.
Would you even put it in the top 10 or the top 20 venues?
I'd put it in the top 20, absolutely. 20? Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, my top one that I remember, I was just like, we did University Portland downtown with a card table. And it was just, poof, I mean, just nothing. And I was like, this is where it's going to happen. And we recovered, because University of Portland downtown, it's a urban campus.
Right.
So we recovered 360 on that one. Right. And we were in this like fenced in area, and there's a lot of footage of that out there. And you see Charlie just against this chain link fence, you know, we backed it up against there to give us a little bit of protection. But I remember that one thinking, this is bad. We are in a very bad environment here.
You know, one of the things I think is really important about, you know, you coming on here and, you know, even on Sean's show and anything that you do in the future, I think, you know, it's, in the United States, we believe in the ability to face our accusers or at least respond to them. You know, there are many social media personalities out there leveling horrendous accusations against you, your team, without really any evidence. And I think the elephant in the room a little bit is Candace Owens. You know, she seems to be leading that. What is your response to her and other people out there saying some of these things?
Well, again, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I have to physically take those words that I heard and let them wash over me every time I hear them. Every time I hear that kind of stuff. And I've removed myself from it. You know, just don't watch it.
Is there anything you'd like them to know as far as, like, I don't know, like the personal impact of some of the things they're saying and doing?
I think, first of all, they have to understand their importance. They have the ability to reach people, and that's important. And so how you choose to use that ability is completely at your discretion. And so how any of them choose to do it, I can't tell them. That's the beauty of it. You know, there's two things that are, thank goodness, that we don't have the ability to do that God gave us. And one of them is to curtail the behavior of man. And the second one is to curtail the behavior of man. Just think, if we didn't have the ability to curtail behavior, we'd still have things as horrible as slavery.
Sure.
And so you have to look at it from that angle and those other aspects, and for them to understand their abilities and their capabilities, and know that you have the ability to be out there and doing some incredible things. And thank goodness for people like them, because one, I don't trust the government either. Mm-hmm. And there's reasons for that. We're not talking about me just being some kook conspiracy theorist. I would say, let's look at some of the horrible things the FBI has done in the last 10 years, especially in the Comey administration. And you're like, man, of course. We all should have a healthy distrust of the government. That's how this country was born.
Yes. Yeah.
Read the Constitution. It's based upon having a healthy distrust of government. So my response to that is, don't be part of the problem, and be part of the solution. Yeah. And know that you have the ability to do the right thing, whether you choose to do it or not. I just have to have the strength to know that let that fictitious stuff, just wash over me.
You know, and I would add to that and just say that, like, these are important voices, and they do have a lot of power and a lot of influence, and their message goes far. And one of the concerns that I have is that, you know, we're going to need these people in the future. And I think that to some extent, when you engage in these accusations or really if you undermine your credibility, you lose the opportunity to step up in the future. It's gonna hamper your ability to be compelling in the future when and where the country needs you most. And that's, you know, look, I've always appreciated, liked, followed, and respected Candace Owens for who she is and what she's done. It's not for me to decide, you know what, and I don't know her motivations or her heart. I'd love to have that conversation with her, but I don't know.
I look at that, and again, I said, hey, assess your value personally. And so understand that you have the ability to be super valuable to the American people.
Right.
And then, you know, I'm not trying to be, you know, Huggy Bear and super, you know, green trophy type stuff, but hey, sometimes words hurt when they're not correct. And so, we've had that discussion internally, and I've had guys that were like, hey, you know, again, whose car are we taking? You know, and but I ask you this and ask them this: have we created a system so that the fictitiousness of what they can say is more valuable than the truth?
I think in the short term.
No, I think right now. Yeah. You look at X and YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. The lie that's completely out was going to get way more traction than the truth. That's why I'm here today, because you gave the truth. And then I want to call Zuckerberg or Musk and say, hey, you know, you guys are part of the problem, right? And if you guys don't get a handle on this, you could be the demise of all of it. And then while they're sitting back, just watching.
Yeah, no, I understand your concern. I guess I would push back a little bit, just because I am a Second Amendment absolutist, but I'm also a First Amendment absolutist. And I know, like, there's some nuance here, and it's a tough question. That's the problem. It's like, how do we, because I don't want Zuckerberg, we already see that. Like, there is a clear censorship of certain political parties, and we'll just say it conservative, and then there is a clear magnification and push of other ideas, and there's demonization of certain concepts and ideas that you can't talk about. You know, it is probably the challenge of our lifetime right now, and I don't have a good answer for you. And the only thing I can say is that, again, the only solution to lies is truth, and we just, you know, if more people would quit being fearful and step up and be courageous like Charlie and get out there and speak the truth, we just gotta, if it takes 10 times the amount of people to get the same bandwidth, fine, let's do it. But people just gotta step up and be courageous and not be afraid. People are gonna assassinate your character, they're gonna undermine you, they're gonna call you names, they're gonna say that, you know, you're a foreign agent, that you're this, you're that. Like, just stop and don't worry about it. and just keep going. There's been some criticism of Dan Flood saying that after Charlie was shot, he pushed him, he shoved him, insert whatever sensational verb you want to. But the insinuation there is essentially Dan assaulted Charlie and slammed him to the ground. Can you talk about, and somebody that's trained a lot of people on PSD, that understands close protection, can you explain to everybody what the standard operating procedure is for the protectee, for the security detail, if there are shots fired and or if the protectee is hit?
Yeah, you want to get them out of the field of view,
Yeah.
right? If we need to drive them to the ground to get them out of that field of view, I mean, that place we were at was horrible because it didn't provide cover. It provided concealment. It was just material. And so I can only assume that Dan's initial thought was to get him out of that field of view and drive him to the ground.
Right.
And so if you watch the video, he just reaches up and puts his hands on him.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that was based upon his.
There's a lot going on there,
Yeah.
too, because
Lack of
Charlie's falling.
And so is he there? Is he thinking assist, like you would assist somebody that you see falling, or is he driving them? I mean, that's the question for Dan, and I would hate to speak for anyone.
Sure.
I know that I only know what we train, and it is, hey, if something like that happens, I'm going to get them out of that first field of view, and then secondarily, I'm going to try to get them off the X.
Yeah.
And so, and if we look back at it, that's what we did.
Right. And people need to understand that body bunker is a thing. Like, again, you'll typically see, depending on the circumstances and a lot of other variables there, but getting the protectee down to the ground, and especially if they're injured, figuring out what's going on with them, assessing that, and then figuring out what to do. But like you said, getting them protected and then getting them off the X is the priority. And people slow these videos down and analyze every single frame, and I understand it. I do it too. But you also need to be able to, you also have to have a little bit of knowledge and experience and not just jump to a conclusion based on, and that's the crazy thing. I'll have people, so many people just want confirmation bias, where they'll send me a video knowing my background and knowing my experience, and Gary, what do you think about this? I'm like, well, that looks pretty standard to me. That's what we did. And you're a Fed, and then move on.
Right.
Come on, dude. No, you didn't get the answer that you wanted.
Yeah, they did. The confirmation bias is a real thing.
It is.
And it's also contagious.
It is. It seemed to be that Dan Flood was wearing meta glasses. Can you confirm or deny that? Was that common? And why did he use those? Did he disseminate photos or videos? If he was using them, did he disseminate photos or videos among security staff? What was the purpose and intent behind those?
Those were meta glasses. I had bought a pair. We've had a bunch of us bought them. And we were basically T&Eing them, because there's value in those.
There is.
And the only I had them for a couple stops, but I went away from them because they weren't reliable enough. If I needed that in a hurry, I couldn't say, hey, Meta. It wasn't reliable enough for me to want to catch evidentiary things or things to protect our reputation. And so I just went away from them because, one, they weren't comfortable on me. And so I got prescription ones, transitions, full old man, everything.
Right.
And spent a lot of money on them, and because I saw the value in them. Those were his. You see him touch them. I asked about that. We've talked about it. He said that was merely a reposition of the glasses. There wasn't any photos taken.
There wasn't activator and deactivator.
There wasn't anything.
Video.
Of course, the FBI is going to ask about all that and require the sharing of that. And so, but that didn't exist. It's merely more of a gesticulation that people do after a big movement to get your stuff put back together. And that's a legitimate question, though. And I don't blame somebody for asking that, because if you're wearing those, they have that capability. Mm-hmm. And so you have to say, yes or no on that one. And I don't blame people. I
mean, I don't know how. It's one of those things that in my mind is probably good in theory, but I don't know how well they operate in actual use. But from a security standpoint, security detail standpoint, that seemed like an extremely powerful
I wished
tool.
they would have worked better.
Yeah.
Because, and then if we're going to use something that, and think about it, is something that it doesn't see what you see, but pretty dang close.
Yeah.
And if I could have a way to activate those by touching something like you would a body worn in real time.
Now, I haven't used them. Is there a button to activate video?
You can't do the video, but you can do still picture.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but you have a meta start video, or at least that's the way I did it and figured it out. But I jumped off the side of this mountain in Nepal, and it was pretty death-defying. And I was like, I wanted people to be able to see how cool it was, or see my last steps, right? Yep. And I was like, hey, Meta, start the video, and it never started. And I was pissed. You know, and so
probably not reliable enough to use in critical moments.
And that's then, and then in other times where I tried to activate them, they weren't reliable enough. The technology's not there yet. Is it a great technology? Heck yeah, man. And is it purposeful and can be used, especially for PSD, to show that you did the right thing? Absolutely.
It'd be great for site surveys too.
Absolutely.
One of the questions that gets brought up a lot, I just like to hear your take on it. I've answered this question a bunch. Why was there no ambulance on site?
So, one, we can't dictate. I can't tell the police, get an ambulance. Now, there were, and that's not up to us, but our philosophy on that also is, and we even have those discussions with other statutory authority people that come in prior to the event. If something happens to the principal, we know the fastest avenue is us. Mm-hmm. Fastest avenue of transport is us. But there were medical people on site there in UTVs, mm-hmm. The mule type UTVs. Sure. For EMS. Their bags were there, and the medics were there. But those weren't capable of transport, obviously, and those were for the crowd. And so, whose decision it was made to put those there in lieu of an ambulance, I have no idea. That's a question for the school. I do know that there's a Utah law that for mass gatherings you have to assign a health officer, and I believe whether an ambulance is staged or not is at the discretion of the health officer. So that's a question for the school. I know there's been security people. Nobody eats their own like the security industry.
Sure.
That tries to benefit from making you look bad, and especially
they want to slip in there and get the job.
And that's it. And those are the guys that I don't let forgive them, Father, for they know what they do. Yeah. They know what they're doing. And then those are the guys that I want to grab by the shirt and give them a black eye.
Out of all the events that you did outdoors that were similar to this, what percentage would you say you had a ambulance on standby?
Very few. Again, you have to look at the rules of emergency medicine also. And the rules are they're not going to give aid unless the scene's safe.
Right.
And in the paramedics that were at UVU, they took off and took cover just like everybody else. Yeah. I mean, the only people that weren't taking cover were our guys.
And folks, I want to explain that a little bit, just so you understand. And this is one of the things, if you go get any sort of TECC, TCCC training, emergency medical training, which I highly suggest you do. It's more important than firearms training. It's the more likely that you'll ever use that. But one of the things that we talk about is the fact that, and why it's so important that the individuals have that capacity, that training, the capability, the equipment, is because let's say you're in a mass shooting. That, if you are shot and you're bleeding out, EMTs aren't running to you. They are going to clear that entire building and make sure it's safe before you get any sort of professional medical provider. Sometimes they'll have tactical EMTs on staff, but still, they're going to go throughout. Their job is to make sure that their guys that are with the guns are safe. They're going to go all the way through that structure, make sure it's clear, and then they might come back to you, and or they may call EMTs that are going to be hanging out in the perimeter. So that's so important for people to understand.
And to your point, we have some phenomenal medical people on our team that are on our team. I mean, we have an ER doc that's been an ER doc for 27 years. We have nurse practitioners, paramedics, military. I mean, I drive that to them. And we do medical training at every CE. We do medical training at weekly training, because I said we're going to use this more than
what is CE?
Continuing education.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we have to do mandatory continuing education, and it doesn't require medical.
Right.
But we do it because mathematically, and we don't just do the sexy stuff like TECC and TCCC does, but that's all the cool stuff. We're doing like anaphylactic, epileptic, diabetics, and so we're doing all that
Narcan.
non-cool stuff that you don't get in the cool guy classes. And our guys are like, oh, come on. And I'm like, man, you're going to see this more.
Yeah.
And so we do that more. And so the medical is a big deal. And then they can call all the prior police departments. We walk through that. It's like, and we'll say, hey, if something happens to our principal, we're going to be the primary E&E people for that. And we do that. And now, if it's something like he twists an ankle and breaks it, we're going to go to the hard room. We're going to stand by in the ambulance or whatever. We're going to handle it that way. But if it's a trauma related, where time is of the essence, we're not going to wait for, hey, go find the medics or have them, because they're not going to violate their deal.
The hospital is 6 minutes away. You're not going to wait 10 minutes for an ambulance to get there, or even take the risk that it's going to take that long to get there. That's just it's the same thing here. Like, we have a medical plan here at my house. We rely on volunteer EMS. It's going to be 20, 30 minutes if something bad happens here. I'm going to be treating my kids. I'm going to be getting them, or my wife or me, and then I'm going to be hauling ass if I have the capacity.
We talked through that beforehand, even with the people of statutory authority, and they're like, yep. And that got substantiated by the ER doc, and then there was some, I don't know what his actual position was with the fire or EMS, but he was at the emergency room when we were there, and both the ER docs said, you guys did the right thing by bringing him in and not waiting for the ambulance. And because you start looking at things like mechanism of injury, and the mechanism of injury there is catastrophic.
Yeah.
And seconds, or literally seconds. And when we start talking about, when we went down and started doing aid, we'll talk about what brought me to that decision, and that's on me. That's not on the team.
I want to dive into that a little bit more in depth in just a second, but I want to give a little bit more context, or when it comes to an ambulance at a school, at an event like this. Number one, we know that some of the most catastrophic events that are way more regular than we would like it to be are active shooting events at schools. So at the average school, you got between 500 to 5,000 students there every day. We know that there's a threat, and we're very aware of that, and there's a huge precedent for it. And yet we don't keep ambulances on staff at every school. And I have talked ad nauseum about the fact that we do not take school security seriously. We spend more money, time, effort, and energy protecting bureaucrats in a government building than we do our own children. And it disgusts me. We don't teach kids or the teachers basic emergency medicine. We don't provide physical security features that wouldn't turn the school into a prison, that would just protect the kids. There's not security protocols that are standardized across our education system that would mitigate, deter, detect, and prevent these active shooting events. We don't do any of those things. So here we have a school that, by the way, it happens to have 45,000 plus or minus students enrolled, that there's probably 10 to 15,000 students on campus every day. I don't know. That's an assumption. I know it's more than 3,000.
Small city.
But the argument is, there was 3,000 people there, you should have had an ambulance. Well, why is it that when there's 15,000 people on campus, the rule is we don't have an ambulance on staff? Like, it's not a sporting event where we would expect that. And also, going back to the insurance, depending on the event, they assess the event and they say, hey, this is what we need in place before we're going to insure you, both from UVU and TPUSA. Both of them have to have insurance for that event. And some of those policies are dictated by that. But I agree, there should have been an ambulance on hand, but there should be an ambulance on hand at every school as far as I'm concerned, especially something that big. And like I don't know, the misplaced or the specified outrage where it's like, this is a higher risk. This assassination is a very rare event, but school shootings are pretty damn common. And we should definitely relook at SOPs for the security world based on this and lessons learned, like we do with everything. But we've had plenty of time and lessons learned on school shootings and protecting our children. And we as Americans have not pushed forward. Like, it'll happen, we'll have a mass casualty event at a school, everybody be horrified for like 2 weeks, and then we go on and we demand no changes whatsoever to making sure that we're protecting our kids through protocols, through physical security features, through having staff, whether we want to have law enforcement armed there or teachers trained in arm, and making sure we have trauma kits on. Like, it's nuts to me.
I'll speak to 2 points of that. And it's like, hey, go back, and Utah, I guess, has a pretty progressive law where they were like, hey, if you have something like that, you're required to have a assigned health safety officer.
Right.
Like, who was it for this event?
Great question.
And so nobody's asked that question. I've asked.
Yeah.
And who was it? And who's the one to dictate, no, we don't need this? Because I know if it were up to me, I'd be like, man, 3,000 people, the world we live in, like you said, should have been there. And or let's start engineering and a lot of cities do this, and we've been there, the colleges. Let's start engineering fire stations on the campus.
Yeah.
Both public and private, and high school, or ambulance stations, so they work out of it.
Let's make sure we have trauma kits all over the place. Yeah. One of the things, this is one of the biggest cons ever in my mind, are AEDs. So, between the ages of 1 to 44, the number one cause of death is traumatic injury. The most healthiest population among us.
They've passed a law for that.
We have to have AEDs everywhere.
Oh, I know.
And, it's funny, one of our instructors, he's a former SEAL Team 6 medic. He was doing a post-event assessment of an active shooting in the airport, and I think it was LAX. He's like, here I was, all these people that were shot, that were crawling, trying to put pressure on their wounds, and this one guy crawled by like 5 AEDs. There's not a single trauma kit anywhere. And the same thing, like, we have and of course, AEDs can be useful, and there's a time and place for those. But the idea that we have all these AEDs in an elementary school all over the place, and we don't have a single trauma kit or anyone trained to use any of that stuff, it's just putting the cart before the horse.
You know how you figure out how that got that way? You go back to the AED company and find out who they paid to pass the law.
It's marketing. It's marketing. And again, I don't even fault them for that, but it's like it's like prioritizing your shirt and when you got no pants. You know what I mean? Like it's just
medical is such a priority.
The mental disconnect on that, and just the average person to sit back and say, all right, let's weigh the risk here. What do we need to have, or what do we need to prioritize? And great, we have the 1% solution covered. Now let's also include the other 80% solution covered that actually kills people. Mm-hmm. And
I think we have to look at and compare it to other things that have progressed through the years when technology increased. It's like if you look at physical banking and the protection of our money, mm-hmm. how we use technology and physical and all these things, and it progresses every year.
Right.
And then protection of our children, it takes an act of Congress and pass a law to get it better.
Yeah.
But man, we'll pass laws and make things to protect our money, both physically and all that in a moment. And so what are we putting in front of who? And then for us, you'll notice that, I was wearing that kit, and our guys physically wear those things because we know that they have to be on us. And then there's simple things. I'm here with you, and mm-hmm. you won't find one of my guys without a tourniquet, which, it's hard to carry a big one, but It's like, hey, let's do less worse and carry something. And then we've got, chest seals and everything. I don't know one of my guys, and this is everyday carry. Yeah. They're going out to eat dinner at a fancy place with their wife, and they have this on them.
And you're 10 times more likely to need that than a gun.
Yeah.
And it's important to have a gun, folks.
Yeah. But it's
be armed, be trained.
We talk about your kit, and it's like, hey, that's your everyday carry. If we did a pocket dump for my everyday carry, that's in it.
Yeah.
And because I know the mathematics are there. And I say this from a point of, my son and I traveled together, and I saved his life in Turkey.
Yeah.
And if I wouldn't have had what I needed on me and that kid, he would be in heaven. And so I see the value of it. I'm with my own hands, I've had the luxury of saving people's life before, and without the training,
Same.
and without the kit that I had on me, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah. And so that's why, for me, I drive it home to our guys, and they drink the Kool-Aid because they see the value in it. And so that's why you see them wearing that stuff, because it can't be, oh yeah, go grab it from the car,
right?
Or we're going to do it when we get to the car. Yeah. No, seconds count.
Yeah, seconds count. It's not when someone's life on the line. It's not time to do a scavenger hunt or do arts and crafts, try to make a tourniquet that's going to, you got to have that stuff.
And you can't
available.
cool guy wear it. Like, you see it, you guys come to the range and they got the tourniquet on and it's still in the plastic.
Still in the plastic, yeah.
And I'm like, or, they had it's just like, guys.
Yeah, no, we had, we literally, we do medical courses on a regular basis, and we had a person come to our 2-day course, left that day with one of our trauma kits, and happened to be going through a rural area, came across a car wreck. There was a lady in the ditch. I remember it a couple years ago. I may get some of these details, but long story short, she's almost a full amputation of one leg, a partial amputation of another, and ambulance took like 25 minutes to get there. And that person had been sitting on the side of the road already for a little bit of time before that. Literally, that training, the kit that guy had, saved that person's life. And it's we need you got to assess risks, right? And there's the perceived threat, then there's the real threat, and we need to do a logical assessment of that. So your guys, one of the things you and I have talked about privately, you've made several mentions of it here, you guys really stress medical training, you have certifications. One of the shortest stories that you told me, one of the reasons that you had been working at TPUSA or with TPUSA for so long was because on one of the first jobs that you ever had with them, you were able to address a medical event, and people were there, they saw that, and they appreciated that. And that's kind of established your credibility, and they understood the importance of that.
They saw us as something outside of like security.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is a value-added service.
Yeah.
And then so that's the way.
And to be clear, going back to what you talked about, the bag that you had on you during that entire event was indeed a trauma kit. And let's talk about, just real quick, some of the things that were in that trauma kit.
Yeah, you build that kit, and it's kind of weird. I wanted the kit I want, I'd be able to like a backpack on, right? And we have Kyle, one of our medics, his kit's like big boy kit, and we call that an event kit, right?
Right.
So we're an MCI. Mm-hmm. So he's there. He may have, I think, 10, 15 tourniquets in there, and so that's for an event, and it follows the masses when we're responsible for those people.
Right.
For me, it has to be mobile, and I have to be able to work around it and move around it. And
quick access.
Yeah, and so then you have to build it so that you can carry it. And then, so for me, I look at probabilities, need, exigency, and so you build those things. So on the outsides, bleed control. So that I can pop it open immediately, and that's the first thing that comes out of it, right? And so I can, whether it be clean 4x4s, anything for wound care, for a GSW or stabbing, and then we have tourniquets, same place outside. And so anything that I need to get to quickly comes from that immediate outside area that it literally can do it under duress with bloody hands, and so you can work through it.
Gross motor movements.
Yeah, and so then you start working into the inside, and that may have the stuff that I may come in for secondary. We got BP cuff, stethoscope, SpO2, oropharyngeal, things like
NPAs.
Yeah, and so you're working through that I may, once I get that in controlled, I may go into my secondary, start evaluating vitals, and then you get into the tertiary things that you have time for. Behind that, would that be like a blanket, splints, aspirin, Band-Aids, stuff that it's not.
All the way from immediate to extended care, and then going into boo-boos.
Yeah,
right?
And so you work your way back through that kit depending upon the exigency of the event, and you want that stuff to be accessible to it. And then it's not, a lot of guys, check that kit bag. And so, and it's hard because some of that stuff's not TSA compliant, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've got EpiPens in there, Narcan, you know, all this stuff building back. Well, on my bags, if it's not TSA compliant, then I would make one that is.
Right.
And so I have one that's TSA compliant, and it goes with me on the plane.
Yeah.
And it's with me, and I've had to use it on the plane.
Yeah.
And so, but it's also is one of those things. The reason why we do that is because if for some reason, and it's happened before, the airline loses our luggage, we're still a go on the event.
Right.
And so that's we learned ourselves from.
Well, that's a great point too. You know, when I was traveling a lot all over the world, there was most of the time I couldn't carry a gun, but you could always carry med gear. Mm-hmm. And again, some of it, depending on what you're using, isn't compliant. But you know, I always have in my car, on my person, carry on. I always have most of those items, right? Sometimes you don't get the fancy stuff, or razor blades, or some of the trauma scissors and things like that. Let's talk about, again, there's lots of speculation about what happened behind that table. And I think is one of the biggest things that, and I also want people to realize, you know, we see that view from you guys working on Charlie. And we become very myopic, and everybody out there thinks that's the only view. Like nobody could see what you were doing. But what people forget is that there were spectators far on the flanks. And it's not like you guys weren't visible to lots of public. You weren't visible to the viewer of the video. But this idea that you guys were just back there, and I hate to even say it, but you know, there's people saying you guys are back there choking him, you're finishing him off. Like, you know, and then that becomes, the crazy part of that is that becomes a predominant voice, and there's not a single adult in the room, or very few out there, saying that's disgusting to even suggest with no evidence or in the void of information. Now, I speculated on the other side, hey, you know what, this is what wound packing looks like, this is what I think they're doing. Now, one of the things I do think I overestimated a little bit was I was kind of going through a slowed down video. You guys, from what I can see, were probably back there about 20 seconds after he fell to the ground. As much as you can, or you feel comfortable with, tell us exactly what did happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's from the get-go, you know, my area of responsibility, I was to the right of Charlie, just the right of Dan, so we got Dan and then Charlie. And I'm out looking at my area of responsibility. We've got a lot of people filling in. I'm also what we call command control position, so you can see all the other positions. And so you can like, hey, look what's going here. Hey, move to this. Hey, check this guy right here. So we're calling that kind of stuff out. And then you hear the shot, and there's a direct attribution. Like, and it's kind of, if you've been around it, you've heard it before. I heard the shot, and then you also heard the bullet hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
you can hear it on the video. It's a thunk.
Yeah, and so and the bad part was, or not bad, but I remember I heard that before I turned around, and then I attributed it before I turned around. Like, oh man, I know what that is. You know, it's just like, oh.
Let me ask you about what you heard. Number one, where did it sound like? Number one, can you attribute that to a certain type of firearm? A, what did it sound like? Number two, where did it sound like it came from?
Yeah, so, you know, I'd be money-muddying quarterback, and if I said I knew where it came from, I knew it came from behind me.
Okay.
Because...
and you were turned...
so if you were to kind of, where I was standing, it would be like to here from me, like to my left, where I was facing.
In the direction of what? Charlie, is that to Charlie's 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
It played like Charlie's 11 o'clock maybe.
Okay.
And then, and so I was faced back this way. So I hear it, and I have attribution, so I turned, and I can see Dan ride him to the ground, right? And I've broken it down, and probably not healthy to watch, but because I want to see what I did too, you know, how I can do better, you know, and so I see Dan kind of ride him to the ground, and so I just take off running towards Charlie because I don't know, or is this about to start a spray? And so you see what's going on, and I just remember I jumped down on top of him, and so I didn't know if this was going to keep happening, and it's to shield him. And then I see later, I don't see it then, but you see it on video, our guys are just piling over the tables, and they're in the same deal. Like, let's just put our bodies between whatever's coming and where Charlie is. And you see Blake just come over that table, and Alex, and just coming over the table, just in full speed. And they're only there just to put themselves between what just happened.
They're using their bodies as potential ballistic protection, and then figuring out what's going on, ultimately knowing, hey, we got to get off this X.
And so I jumped down on top of him, and we're kind of just face to face. And when I get down there, I see, he's got doll's eyes. And so I was like, man, this is bad.
So just for people that don't understand that term, like, immediately, what was your thought?
I was like, you use these things, you'd show up and a guy had been shot or shot himself or in a car wreck, and later the reason why in your report you had put, like, upon arrival, the person had wounds incompatible with life. And so that actually went through my head, like, dang it,
You felt immediately he was no longer with us.
You generally don't have attribution of life with doll's eyes.
Yeah.
And so if you've seen it enough, you've seen it,
Yeah.
and so it's...
What do you mean, just, again, a blank stare, no blinking?
Right.
We're starting to, got it.
And so if it's a bad guy or somebody, you just go to work, right? But he was bleeding, was coming out, and I remember I got down on top of him, and it was with my right hand. I just was shoving it down, trying to do bleed control. Just immediately put something in there.
So you got your fingers in the wound. You're looking for the source of the bleed.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel a pulse at all while your fingers are in there looking for that artery? And here's the thing, people talk about, oh, it was the jugular, it was the
Carotid.
Carotid. People were saying, hey, look, this is the jugular, it's the carotid. I personally, given the proximity of both of those and the damage clearly done, I think both were most likely severed.
And that's factual.
Yeah,
I can tell you that's factual. Yeah, that's a factual statement.
I don't see how you're severing one without the other with the trajectory of that bullet, the type of bullet it was, and I don't care if somebody thinks it's a .223, a rifle round that close to the jugular and the carotid. Both are going to be
And that's something
damaged.
that, again, I'm not releasing it. The OR doc released that.
Gotcha.
And Andrew Coley talked about it.
So both were severed.
Yeah, and so, or I don't know how they worded it, but I know they had talked about the mechanism of injury.
Right.
And then did you see a pulse? Well, man, it just gets kind of morbid, but you break it down, watch the video. It was coming out.
Yeah.
And so I'm on top of him pretty close and just putting it in there, and you can feel it coming out.
Yeah.
And then I remember it coming out enough.
And that's what I mean by, did you feel a pulse? Could you still feel
Sure.
the blood pumping?
This blood was pumping 7 seconds ago, normal.
Right.
And so it's still pumping now. And so it was enough that I remember I went like that, and I could taste his blood on my lips. Like, oh, that's blood, And so apparently it squirted through or something, and got a piece had squirted through and got on me. That's how close we were.
Right.
And so you feel it, right? You feel it. And so I just was thinking, man, this is bad. But we're talking milliseconds here, right?
Yeah.
And
Let me.
yeah.
Right in front of you, I don't know his name. A dark-haired gentleman. He had glasses on. Younger guy. Looked like he was in his late 20s at most. Had jumped over the table. He was actually down below. He was right in front of Rick Cutler. He actually gets down lower below the table, and he is clearly doing something. What you are trying to do some bleed control. What was he doing?
So and you see that kind of on his hands later.
Yeah.
It's like, it's Blake, and man, he just, came over like, how can I help, right?
Yeah.
And he's down in there. And it's hard because you know you have to get off the X.
Right.
And you know it's still coming. And then I've got my hand in it, and I want to say Blake was helping or something, and that's how that blood got on his hand. Mm-hmm. So we're on it, we're just trying. But then, and again, I've mentioned this before, and they told me, I don't remember giving this order, but I said, hey, prep the vehicle. You know, and so the vehicle's prepped and in place, but the doors aren't open. Where, you know, it's not, the driver's not in, ready to go.
Right.
And you see Blake take off.
At one point in that moment, and this is where some people were saying it was a handoff, I slowed it down and I proved you were not handing anything off. There was an older gentleman. You're actually pointing, and I think it was just in the, I don't know what to attribute it to. A lot of stuff going on. He's trying to figure things, but he like grabs your hand as you're pointing. Mm-hmm. What were you telling? Was that when you were saying go get the vehicle?
Yeah, that's right. And because that guy's, his name's Lane. He's from Y-Refi. He's like a sponsor, right? He was back there as a sponsor for the tour.
Yeah. Not part of security.
No, but he's a known.
Yeah.
You know, he was allowed in the non-permeable area because he's a known.
Right.
And then, you know, he runs up there. I don't know him, you know, well or enough, but I just remember, I think that's, you know, when I said, hey, go get the vehicle ready, right? And so, because I'm like,
and you weren't even necessarily talking to him?
No, I was, and my guys knew who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was, and to that was the only comms that was made. Nobody, we knew our, everybody knows their jobs and roles and responsibilities. Nobody said, hey, fall back. Everybody fell back. They knew. We practiced that and done that, and guys have done that in real life and training, and so we just fell back and did what we were prepared to do. And so prep the vehicle, and then, but here's the hard part for me, and it's like, man, I need to do wound care, or I know what wound care, continuous wound care needs to look like, but at the same time, I've got to get off this X.
And that's the standard operate. Like, that's what we teach. Like, we don't care for people on the X. You got to get them off the X. Everything. I don't know if you guys had assessed. You know, when I was making that video, and again, I said I was speculating. I don't know if you guys had assessed that the scene was safe or what was going on in your head. So
I'm literally thinking, and I remember thinking, damn, I'm up here high.
Yeah.
You know, like in a stud, but I sat back, and then Rick's there, and then Dan was there, and you can kind of see us all in that same frame, and that's like there had been the command for that. And then at some point I said, we're exfilling.
Yeah.
And again, you pull back. I said, oh, this is not the time or place. We're about to get shot again. I don't know what's going on, but again, training, you get off the X, and I just called for exfil. And we're not treating a wound on the X. The medicine's not done there. The medicine's done, you know, when we get off of that. And so,
so just to be clear, there was actually no wound packing that took place there.
And so people have asked me that, and I'm like, man, I don't remember. You're just in automation, right?
Yeah.
I know that everything. I know that I don't remember opening my kit when I got in the car. I remember it was all like, so when date and time or time second stamp. I remember when I put that first batch on. I know from personal inventory that I started with 4x4s because they're the easiest to get in, right? And that's why they're there. So I started with 4x4s, and then hemostatic.
And when you're saying you're starting with 4x4s, are we still behind the table?
No, in the car.
Okay.
In the car.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no wound packing, as far as you remember, took place behind the table.
You know, and again, I don't remember.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I don't. I wish I could say, or I could say that, you know, the textbook. Yep, started that right there. No, I don't.
I don't think that. I mean, textbook is get them off the X.
Yeah.
And again, there was, Monday morning quarterbacking, hindsight being 2020. We still didn't know that it was just one shot. Mm-hmm.
And you're not the first person that's asked me that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I couldn't tell you. Yeah. I couldn't. I know what my inventory was, and I know what my inventory wasn't when we got there.
If one of the things that we do with our training is I'm sure you do too, scenarios, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the best way to learn. And if I was running that exact scenario and I had a student back there packing wounds in that spot, like, hey, dude, stop what you're doing. Get him off the X. I mean, that is the textbook call, and anybody that knows anything about tactical casualty care, which is exactly what we're talking about, care under fire. That is textbook. And one of the things too is like people were slowing that video down, and I became a little bit of a victim of this too. Is like, you know, it looks like minutes, and of course they're back there saying that you're, I don't know, doing all the things that they're saying, but to be able to even sell that, they have to slow that video down
to make it look like it was.
To make it look like it was.
It was less than 20 seconds.
Yeah, it was. It was when you play it full speed.
And we go further than even that. Hey, stop. We do those scenarios. We do scenario-based training for our team and contractually. And if we take it to the next step, where if they're doing 8 on that X, we come in and shoot them with UTM.
Yeah,
we
do the same thing.
We give them a pain penalty right there.
Yep.
And we're like, all right, now we have 2 victims.
Yep.
And so we drive home the fact of that. And so, yeah, it was all about movement. And so prep the vehicles. There's that communication. I don't know when it came out, but it's like we're exfilling, and we start to the car, and you see the guys just pick up, and we start carrying towards the car. I think Blake, Alex, the guys we're carrying towards the vehicle. Rick broke off because you've done it probably where we practice the officer down or person down, and one drags across.
One person's on the far side pulling the casualty.
And he did exactly that. He starts pulling across. I shared with you last night, we had some, you know, to a point it was like there's bench or cabin seats there. It wasn't a bench, and so it made it increasingly difficult. And so, but we managed it, and it didn't slow us down. Justin gets inside, gets ready to, you know, preps the vehicle, is driving. Dan's up there, and he's got the nav pulled up, and we're ready to go. Rick's on the side, and then Frank Turek jumps into the back. I was a little shocked by it, right? But Frank's a known, and so that's one of those things I'm not going to argue with him about.
Sure. You don't have time to get into debate on who's coming or who's not.
It doesn't mitigate anything, and Frank's a known, and a known with a good heart and a good cause. And so,
now once you're in the vehicle, I'm assuming now we are doing some wound packing. What other interventions were taking place?
So we take off and getting out of the parking lot. I mean, it was so busy, right? And Justin's just navigating it, right, and just booming it, because we knew what road. When you see him get to that road, and we just take off, and Dan's calling it out like, you know, upcoming here, you know, we got half block, next block up, we're turning left, and a lot of people think, you know, we don't have lights and sirens, we're working that ourselves, right. You know, and so, and it's all about exigency. You know, why are we doing that? And it's because we got to get there, and then we got to get to this place that's, I know it's a level 3, you know, but it's 7 minutes closer than the other one.
Right.
And so we're getting there, and I've discussed this before and with people, and we didn't. It's not funny, but it's kind of weird, because it's not the way you give medicine. It's like we talk about a lot of medicine in austere environments, and the door was open, and Justin's driving, like I said, you know, 60, 80, 100 miles an hour,
right.
as fast as that car can go within his capabilities. And Dan's up there calling it out, but we couldn't get the door closed because Charlie's foot was down in the door leg, and so it's open. And then, but I was like, it's irrelevant. Door open, door closed. We're getting off the X, and so I'm on my knees. And I'm both hands, and I'm starting to pile out, like, you know, pack pressure, you know, exactly. And it's the saturation point's unbelievable, and you're not pulling it out, you're adding to it, right?
Right.
And so we're getting that down in there, and I remember, it's a training point. We've done to it before, and there has to be a better way, like a manufacturer. Maybe we can go into it. It's like that little slit on the side of those.
You talking about the hemostatic gauze?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, guys.
I usually go in and actually cut them a little bit more.
But then, you know, it's like, we need something to pull. We need something in real time, right? And so I'm opening those with my mouth, and then putting them down, and then spreading it out a little bit, and then putting them down so I can get a pack in that, and then I'm holding it there, and then working off the other one. Well, Rick's seeing this, right? That I'm working both hands, and the door's open, and I'm halfway out, and we're going, you know, super fast down the road. So he just reaches up and grabs me. And he's holding me in with his hands so that I can work both hands freely on the wound, and I don't have to worry about falling out of the car. And so Frank's just praying out loud, and Rick's praying, and I can hear just the car revving, just going hard. And I hear Dan just calling out the directions to Justin, so he doesn't have to look at anything but the road. And you know, we get there.
Was CPR being conducted during this time?
You know, no, because right now I got to stop that bleeding.
Yeah, no, I had heard conflicting reports, and I was a little confused by that. Like, we can't start doing CPR before the bleeding stops. Right. And people don't understand that.
Prioritization of care, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I've got to get that bleeding stopped before. And then I knew that we were not that far from the hospital. And the human body can, so I got to stop that bleeding.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I just got to stop the bleeding. And so that was my primary, you know, that's the chief complaint from the patient that I have right here. And so I'm going after that bleed control, trying to stop that. And so we go to the hospital. I'm just working him the whole time out of the kit and just putting him on. And
one of the questions was asked, why did you refuse the additional kit or assistance from the EMTs on site?
We didn't refuse any. They weren't around.
There's a video coming out. I don't know, it definitely wasn't with you, but there's a video that come out that suddenly these EMTs, and they try to hand off a bag to one of the guys, either your team, whatever else.
While it was going on?
Yeah, like
wow.
I think you guys already had Charlie loaded up. I have to go back and look at that video.
So, you know, that's one of the things that I would love to go back and look at that. But then if I were to grab your blowout or your kit right now, where am I going to go to find it?
Yeah. Well, one of the arguments was like there was a AED in there, and you know, people don't understand what an AED is and what it does. They think it restarts the heart or it's some sort of life support. All it does. Charlie wasn't having a heart attack.
No.
He was shot. You know, he had a penetrating wound, and that was the main thing. So
I think if we'd, you know, all these guys are looking at it from the glasses of 2020, right?
Right.
Sure, if I'd had, you know, seconds to waste and this was going to be an ongoing deal, hey, yeah, man, why not throw 2, 3, 4 extra kits in there on us? But I don't recall that. If it might have been something that they tried to hand it off to somebody that was on the outside and it didn't get there.
I think that's what.
But our guys know I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
I'm wearing what we have.
You have your kit. You know what you're familiar with it. We have no idea the status of the equipment they're handing you. It wouldn't have helped anyhow. There's nothing that, and I've said the same thing. And I said, you know, if suddenly the exact same thing happened to my son, and I am now trying to get him to get him to the hospital that's about 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away. And somebody out of the woods pulled up and handed me a freaking blowout kit with, I don't know, AEDs or whatever else. I was like, no, I wouldn't even waste my time looking at that. I don't know what's going on.
The precious seconds are trying to find,
Yeah.
well, where's this guy keep his, you know, clean? Or is he, it's like, I'm not going to do that. I know that I have this here, and I know I have enough.
In some people's mind, it's like, oh, here was this other option to save his life, because they don't understand the injury, they don't understand the protocols to address that injury, and they don't understand the limitations of what an AED does. It doesn't restart the heart. It fixes any sort of arrhythmia that is caused by different mechanisms. The point is that you're not even aware of it, that kit was being handed off, and secondly, nothing in that kit, for people that don't understand, nothing in that kit would have changed the outcome or would have even been a net benefit whatsoever. I just want to make people clear. Is there anything else that you want to convey to people out there? I have some questions from some followers that I want to ask you, but before we get to that, is there anything else that you want to make sure that people know? Yeah,
you know, I mean, it's kind of been addressed, but we're not foreign agents. And we're not working for a foreign entity.
Here's a question for you. Yeah. Have you ever worked a detail? Were you a part of Bibi Netanyahu's detail or any Israeli person out there? Because there is a X profile that is continually pushing that, saying that you've worked for Bibi Netanyahu.
And they showed me a picture, and one, the guy doesn't even look like me, and he's like 5'4".
Yeah.
And I'm like, but again, that's not, it doesn't have to be true, it only has to be. And so, no, we've never worked with any Israeli Netanyahu, we're not Mossad, we're just a bunch of guys that work and have a goal and task. And so, no, we never work for anybody. We're not foreign spies implement. And so that's just, it's kind of like, hey, put down your mom's hot pockets and get away from her basement and get out there and get into the real world. And so it's, no, we're not. And so, and then we're also, I mean, this is our craft.
Yeah.
This is what we do. And so to attack it, these guys have seen a lot of violence in their life.
Sure.
We all have.
Yeah.
And so you have the ability just from the reps to compartmentalize that part. And because we're not saying you get used to it, because nobody should get used to that. You don't get used to it. You're just able to file it away. But when they're not used to people attacking their honor.
Yeah.
And haven't and still can't. And so that's one of those things as somebody that, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's actually why I'm here.
Yeah, and you guys are a victim. Charlie and his family was a victim in all this. And then for people to take this and to continue to destroy, target, and quite frankly, put you guys at danger. Like, there are crazies out there, and when people are telling, with zero evidence, by the way, when people are saying that you that you were part of a conspiracy, that you work for a foreign state, like, that is putting you and your family at risk. I don't care what anyone says. And here's the other problem that I have with some of this stuff that really irritates me, is some of these accusations aren't even direct. It's like this innuendo, gossipy, insinuation. Oh, well, look over here. We've talked about it, and I've seen it. People of prominence, people that have reach. You can tell their coach, all right, you can say this all the way up to this, and we can almost paint the picture and give the picture, but then we have to steer away from it. And then that's a tactic and technique they're utilizing for merely the views and clicks. And it's like, and to somewhat cover their own ass from libel suits, defamation. I don't think that would actually be, because here's the problem. I've even had people come to my channel and leave comments saying, well, this person said this definitely happened. And I'm like, I don't think they actually said that. And then they'll send me the video, I'll watch that clip, and they don't actually say that. It's they insinuate, and they let the viewer come to a conclusion that they've guided along. And I find that the slimiest. Just if you're going to accuse somebody, accuse them directly, be clear about it. Don't sit there and play around with these games. It's like doublespeak of a politician, but even worse. You're playing with people's lives, livelihood, their families, the victims, and everything else in between. And one of the other things too, the same things happened to Erica Kirk. And one of the things I always think about is their two kids. At some point in time, they're going to go back when they're older, and they're going to start searching some of this stuff. And these kids are going to be exposed to again, with zero evidence, that it was being said that their mother was responsible for their father's death.
I don't have any people that would insinuate that, whether veiled or whatever. I don't have any, that they know that. And so that's not one of those things where they don't know what they do. If they're knowingly doing that, and we've had those people that are out there that cast on us that were from the industry and that knew, but they did it to better themselves, or they tried to use it as a pony to help themselves better themselves for the public eye or whatever. Those are the people that, I'm not done with you. There's no reason for that besides your own self-gratification. And I kind of likened it to this whole they're working off that based on an actual event. Like you watch a movie and at the beginning it says based on an actual event.
Yeah.
It's like based. Yeah, you got like 10% of it's factual. People are like, oh, remember when? And it's like it's the gospel.
They both happen to happen on a Friday.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so that's what they're doing. And then, hey, to their defense, we've been conditioned to believe that. And so I'm that's why it's kind
that behavior is incentivized both social media and by the people watching it. And
so that's when they do it, I don't condone it, but I understand it, you know. And so I understand what they're doing because they've been conditioned that way. And the way I look at it, they're weak people. They're weak people that in the real world, if it all went down tomorrow, they wouldn't survive a day.
Yeah, and you know, it's unfortunate that if anyone has to go like a legal route to address some of these things, because what it should be is, again, self-regulation. Like just good people out there saying, look, folks, you can't just accuse these people or make these types of insinuations or innuendos without some sort of proof. It's not about your feelings. It's not about, and the other thing that I find a little bit, well, I find it disgusting, that some people are caught up in this and like this excitement of this like murder mystery, and they're just like, that's part of it. And there's, you know, then there's genuine people out there that are trying to find the answers, and some of them are wrong and I think misguided, and that's fine. But I think they're good faith actors. But then there's people that are just flat out exploiting this for views and clicks and are grifters. And then there's something else out there that I think is much more serious and much more nefarious and is kind of engineering some of these things to damage the American people further. And many people are allowing them to be tools of that. And I think we just need to have a little bit more cognitive security and be conscious and don't just be suspicious and of what the government says. Like, you need to be just as suspicious or more suspicious of what comes out on the internet. Like, find some things out before, and we've all done it. Like, I've been on social media and, you know, I see something about a politician I don't like and I'm like, oh, got him. And come to find out it's not true.
I didn't know this, and you brought it up, and man, it was great information that, you know, adds to my toolbox. Is you talked about, you know, 98 people? Yeah, that.
Yeah, so, you know, it's easy for us to focus on, you were talking about me getting my ass kicked for standing up for you guys, which I'll take, bring all the ass kickings. I couldn't care less. But, and even I get focused on the negative comments, right? You get down there and you know, there's certain things that I definitely have emotional reactions to that I'm working on. I'm only human, but I'm working on that. But so that becomes your focus, and you're like, man, you know, is this even worth it? But then what I'll do is I'll go look at our video analytics, and that video that somebody's, whatever, there's a bunch of negative comments in there. Number one to remember is people that are negative are going to hit that thumbs down button. They're going to comment. The people that you're persuading or you're having a positive impact on, like 90% of the negative people are going to comment. They're going to hit that thumbs down button. Probably 40 to 30% of the people that get something positive out of it are going to hit that thumbs up, are going to leave a positive comment, which, by the way, folks, I can't tell you how timely and what a messenger you were. Some of you people that have left extremely positive comments, like the impact of those, I don't think you'll ever really appreciate. So thank you for those that leave those comments. But then I actually go to the video analytics, and then I see likes versus dislikes. And that's where the real story is told, because it's like 96%, 97%, 98% are thumbs up. So it's those provocative voices that seem the loudest, that give you a misconception of your reality. The fact is you're having a bigger impact, a positive impact than you think you are. And those are the people you want to reach anyhow. You want to reach the people that are, I don't know, just just good people. Like there's people on other ends of anything that you're not going to be able to persuade or convince or to even have a reasonable view on what you're talking about. But it's all of those in the middle that are the quiet majority that you're actually having a bigger impact on than you realize. And that's why this is so important, and we have to remind ourselves.
That was great information. It kind of, pushed some of the, I guess, the stress down in me. It was like, oh, wow, I had no idea of that. And I purposely removed from myself from all that. And my fiance's done a phenomenal job of, being my protector for that. I've never been in a relationship before where somebody stood next to me or even sometimes in front of me. And so for me, that's something that I'm like, dang, where's this come from?
Well, it's the right person at the right time in your life.
It is.
And everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and I'm happy to believe that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we got to keep our eyes on that. I got a few questions from followers. These ones are particularly from X. Mike Streegis 11 asks, has TPUSA or Erica reached out to you or your team? How is the relationship? More importantly, why didn't TPUSA defend the security team when everything was being said?
That's a great question. I don't know. They had the information, though. I can tell you that.
Fair enough.
The totality of the information, not just based on actual event. The totality of it, from prep to position to response. They've had it from the beginning.
I guess, if I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, look, I think there's a lot of lawyers involved, and lawyers are always going to tell you to stay quiet till after. I'm not making an excuse. I don't know if that's the truth. And let's be real. At the end of the day, the security team is almost an afterthought in one of these events, and I think people don't understand that.
We've had that discussion before
Yeah.
with the guys, not necessarily with that client, but other clients. I have to remind them, as close as we are to them, we're still just the help.
Yeah.
And don't ever think you're any more than the help.
And ultimately going to be a scapegoat. I mean, that's just part of it. Rage Bronson, YT on X says, what time did you start setting up the morning at UVU? What time or when was the canopy set up? If Tyler Robinson was on campus around 9 to 10 a.m., would he have been able to get an idea of where Charlie would be sitting?
Yeah, I've kind of discussed that before, and unless he didn't have a cell phone with him, and that's something that I hope comes out, that, hey, are we going to be able to get a tower hit from there close and what time? And then, where did he come from that morning on the same tower hit if he had a cell phone on him? And then, or who did
he was definitely seen moving about prior to the event.
And so, and then what time he accessed that? Well, I'll back up to the first question is we always get there early. Like when I say early, I think that morning we got there around 9. And one of the things, and I feel guilty about it, but not that guilty, is we make the guys be part of the setup. Like they physically have to be there and help with the build. And these are world-class protection detail guys. They could work anywhere.
Right.
And I'm down there telling them, nope, hey, help me hump these spots. Me too, though.
Find work.
I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm down there humping them too. And we're putting barricades in place. We're looking at fields of view. We're doing all that. So, and there's reasons for that, though. They have intrinsic knowledge of the setup. Where the vehicles are parked, the primary, the secondary, the tertiary security measures that we have in place. And then we walk through it and we talk to it. And then that's also as a group, because that way if for some reason some guy leaves, he can fall into his position and pick it up. And so there's
nobody's sitting back saying, oh, that's not my job.
No, and because if somebody did say that, I'd say, you're absolutely right, it's not. And they know that. And plus, man, if you and I were out right now and we had to dig holes, 2 holes, and then I dig mine faster, and if I sit on my ass and watch you dig, that's not what I want. My expectation then would I get down in that hole and help you finish your hole.
Right.
And that's the way these guys are. And so they're there, we're there at 9, and we're building it, we're on site early, we're walking it, we're making sure everything's set up correctly. We even send out, I sent them to you, we even send out pictures of the view of what he would see when he sits down so that, that he has an idea of it. And then we talk through it. and then we go over assignments, and then those assignments or double check so that everybody knows what their assignment is. And then the prior before, whether he got on beforehand. We sent out guys in that area of responsibility and even a little further, not past the Sorensen, but that morning of. And these are work finder guys. They're smart guys for field operations, and that's why we chose to have them do that. I said, hey, go out and do this. And they're going out there and they're looking for people that don't fit in the protocols of that. Like, we got a military-age male sitting in an elevated position that's there close, merely watching us set up, and he's been there for 20 minutes. And so we go up and we're like, hey, how are you doing today? My name's so-and-so, I'm with this. Are you a student here? You here for the event? Yeah, I know I'm not a student. Oh yeah, then why the backpack?
Right.
And so, and then he has no reasonable expectation of privacy. We took pictures of him and everything, and we do that kind of intel workup out there, and then we gave that information to the FBI. And so all that's out there. So yeah, we're out there not just standing around waiting. We're proactively setting up and gathering intel from around 9 that morning.
I just want to give a special recognition to Piper. There was actually several Piper on X. She's done some great work on this. She's actually sent me a bunch of, number one, some of the questions I asked throughout this. Instead of saving them to the end, I included them, but she was responsible for that, asking about Rick Cutler and Dan wearing meta glasses, which was a great question that I hadn't thought of. So if you're not following Piper on X, make sure you go follow her. She's done a lot of solid investigatory work that I've relied on as well. So great job, Piper. Looking back, Brian, what do you think that you guys could have or should have possibly done differently?
And people have asked that, and we've asked each other that.
Sure.
And so we look at our operations plan, our workup, and we're like, what could we have done? What could we incorporate? And I'm like, man, if it were up to us, yeah, I'd have rolled in an APC. We had had, no budget, and there's a difference there. We have to work within realities, right. And so, I hate to lower myself to this guy, yeah. But I wish I wouldn't have trusted that chief. I wish, but this is a command level, accredited police department, chief of police days before, and when we're talking about a specific area, and then when it comes across and there's like, this is what we're concerned with, and then when it comes back with I got you covered, you tell me, and I'll take it. Is there another way for me to construe that that's taken care of?
Yeah. And
we've seen some negative press where somebody has said, people have said, well, I wouldn't even let him out of the car unless I'd triple confirmed that those roofs were cleared. And I'm like, well, first of all, when did he get on the roof?
Yeah.
When? And then we talked about that. It's just me. I don't think he was hanging out up there for an hour and a half before it went down.
No.
And so when did he get on the roof? Secondarily, it's like, okay, well, you wouldn't be able to have seen it. Most of our team couldn't see it. And then thirdly, that wasn't our responsibility as told by the chief of police.
Right.
And lastly, it's like, oh, really? Are you going to tell him, hey, Charlie, you stay in the car. You shut your mouth. Because you'll be working somewhere else the next day.
Yeah.
And so those are guys that are saying negative things like that to make themselves look better. And you're probably saying that to look better because you're not that good in the first place.
Yeah, there's a big difference between doing an initial clear of a roof and then constant monitoring throughout an event.
The hold.
While you're dealing with 3,000 plus people with you had 11 or 12 guys?
Mm-hmm. And then we look at mathematics. All right.
Yeah.
I physically know that I have 3,000 threats within 50 meters in front of me. I know that. It's a given.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have no threats that is not in my area of responsibility 140 something out.
Yeah.
And so I have to work off my known and mathematic probability and historical mathematic probability and assigned area of responsibility. And so if I start looking at past that, I'm deviating from the mathematics of threat.
Right.
And if I start looking at more, I'm going to see less and less and less.
Yeah.
And so and again, I don't fault a lot of people because they think, oh, I've seen every Bourne ultimatum. I'm pretty much a CIA guy.
Yeah.
And because that's kind of they're experts the proxy of the internet or TV, and it's like, and then we have a lot of time people come to training and they do some silly stuff with a gun, like full Sabrina from the Charlie's Angels out, and I was like, where do you see this? And like TV, you know, and TV's the largest firearms trainer in the world.
Yeah.
And especially when you get into other countries, they're emulating what they see on TV. And I'm like, first of all, what is TV? It's fake. It's not real. Mm-hmm. You know. And so we have to look at all that stuff and try to get that across to people that that's a fictitious thing you're seeing, and we're dealing in reality.
It's just a matter of, and we all do it, right? We are coming to false conclusions based on bad or incorrect information and what we think. You know, that you can go into a Dunning-Kruger effect if you want to even go there, but like we all do it, right? And
you coalesce to some really good stuff every once in a while, and you're like, oh, I mean, I know you're probably as big as a hypocrite. I can't sit around and watch, I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, and it has to do with tactics or guns and stuff involved, and I'm like, God, you can't do that. And they'll be like, why can't you just relax and watch it? And I go, no, because people think that that's actually the thing to do, and then they can either transfer that and it could kill them or hurt them. And so it's like, I just want to say, I don't know who the technical advisor was on it, but he needs to be backhanded. Yeah. You know,
I think so. Again, you know, I don't. It doesn't need to be technically or tactically correct. It just needs to look good. Mm-hmm. And you know, to some of that is what we're dealing with here. It doesn't need to be technically correct. It doesn't need to be factual. It doesn't need to have evidence backing it. It just needs this very thin correlation and a good story and a good presenter, and you can convince anybody of anything. And hopefully, if nothing else, this entire thing going forward is a case study of why we as Americans need to, I don't know, assess information more carefully and just refuse to be fooled. It's as simple as that. The last thing I want to ask you is there anything about, we'll just call it the narrative, right? The FBI narrative, the Utah narrative, from a evidence standpoint, lack of information standpoint that you take issue with?
Of course. You know, evidentiary standpoint, you know, I don't know what the evidentiary, I don't know what they're doing. I know that they were pretty strict about it because when I jumped down on my phone, jumped down on Charlie, my phone came out. And so it was in there. And so even after all the team had gone home, I'm stuck in Arizona with no phone. And I couldn't really leave my tasking to go get one, and so I'm just there. And so, but my guys, and we went back, and you can see the phone on the ground. And I'm like, hey, that's my phone. If you hit it, this will come up. And they were like, sorry. It was part of the crime scene.
Oh, one thing you brought up on the Sean Ryan show that I hadn't heard before. There was a video going around that shows your guys like walking around.
They were directed to do that.
They were looking for evidence or suspicious things, and they were told to do that. That fills a gap of information because people were turning that into a whole bunch of different things. Like why are they out there?
If we're there to assist, I mean, but they also went through there after we all left. They went back into that same crime scene to give aid to people at their own peril. They didn't care about their own safety, their own family, their own children, right, and what they would feel. They went back in there to an unknown after we dropped to tell, I mean, do we have more injured? And they went, and so hold your tongues, you know. They went back there and traipsed through the crime scene to find more people that were hurt. And then later they went back there on the crime scene under direction of statutory authority. So there's that. And then as far as the evidentiary, like we said, goes, I don't know. I mean, I know mine was held, and so I didn't get it back.
Do you see any holes in the official story that you can
Yeah, as me, I want to know. I mean, I've seen the videos, right? The grainy deal videos where he's jumping off of the building.
Right.
And it's like, all right, I want to know, did we have the ability to track or seen from the space that he jumped down off the building and it looks like the rifle was there to where they found it? And then, where's the casing?
They said it was actually in the
rifle.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's like, hey, did we pull prints off of that? Have we pulled DNA off of it?
They did.
Yeah. And so
in the charging document, they said they got, and again, some people are going to completely dismiss the charging document. I think it's pretty hard to dismiss, given that it's going to be challenged in court, and it'll be real clear if there were discrepancies from the defense. You'd imagine is going to go through that with a fine-tooth comb. They said there was voluminous evidence, and it was the defense that asked for
the gag
a
order.
postponing. Well, they did ask for the gag order. They also asked, the defense is asking for the trial to not be public. So is the prosecution. But as far as the evidence that is put in that charging document, there was DNA, his DNA on the rifle, his DNA on the trigger, his DNA on the spent cartridge, his DNA on non-spent cartridges, his DNA on the towel, and even if
Weapon, where was it purchased? Who was it purchased by? Purchase documents of where they bought the ammo.
Apparently, well, the ammo's still in question.
Right.
And that is definitely one of the biggest questions for me, is that we do have this ballistic event that is anomalous, right? We have a 30-06 shot from 140 yards, and people are saying it's impossible to not have an exit wound. And just to verify or clarify, did you see any evidence of an exit wound?
No, and of course you look for one. That's part of the
course.
thing you do in training. But then that's been spoken to publicly.
It has. People won't accept it, because what's crazy to me is there's other Green Berets, there's other people saying it's impossible.
I saw somebody from, I'm not even going to name it, but like,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and he called. He's like, that was a bomb. It came off, and I'm like, this guy's an idiot on his best day.
Yeah.
Are you sober?
And this was a special operator, to be clear. Here's the problem with anyone that says something's impossible when it comes to a 30-06 not having an exit wound. And these are just facts that you cannot, you can't contest. Number one, we don't know what that ammunition was. We don't know if that was store-bought ammunition or if it was hand loads.
Was it bonded? Was it, all those
We don't know
things,
the projectile type.
Right.
We don't know if it was frangible, bonded, FMJ. We don't know the condition of the ammunition. Was it old ammunition? Was it stored properly? Was it exposed to moisture? We don't know the muzzle velocity. We don't know, one thing, we know that he engraved on the cartridge. We don't know if he did anything to the projectile itself. We don't know certain things that we would need to know about the rifle itself. Was that bullet properly stabilized because of the rifling? We don't know the weight of that bullet. Was it 100 grain? Was it a 200 grain? And that's the problem, is most people that have shot 30-06, they're usually shooting full power ammunition, 150 grain to typically 180 grain, some up to 220, thereabouts. Like, there are 100 other options, both commercially available and then 1,000 more options available if we are hand loading that. So, like, all the exact parameters and variables that we would need to know to make a logical conclusion or a prediction of the results, we don't know that information.
And I ask, could that go out and not taint a jury? I mean, we're not talking about who bought it. Okay, fine. We're just going to give evidence type, because they already said. It's like, hey, let's go a little further on that and give type, and so that could lend to some more believability.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm with a lot of these people that are saying, hey, this is wrong. We have a conspiracy for this, because that's based upon, we've been lied to a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I agree with them. And man, it's like, hey, but by you lying, or it's like you're complaining about what you're complaining about.
Yeah, you
are what you're complaining about.
You are doing.
It's like complaining about your neighbor doesn't mow his grass and you don't mow yours either.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey man, let's do this. And then at the same time, to these authorities, hey, throw them a bone. Give them something that they've seen that you can release information so that it won't taint a potential jury, but at the same time quest some information. Like, all right, well, this makes sense, or this is the reason why. And there has to be some kind of median there.
Yeah.
And what that is, I don't know. They're professionals. That's what they do.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, where is that line, and who makes that call? I think, look, the defense is going to attempt to make all of those cases, and I do think that there is a prudent argument from the prosecution side saying, you know what, we're just not going to release any information because we don't want to, number one, we don't want to violate the constitutional rights of Tyler Robinson, the accused. And I don't know what else they're trying to find out right now. I don't know if there's other people involved. I think we're just finding out. This is one of the things I said long ago. I think, when we look at Butler, personally, I think that Thomas Crooks was the shooter. What we don't know, and where there seems to be a cover-up, is how was that guy directed? Because I think this is another case of this, and we can go to Stephen Paddock, we can bring up a bunch of other different shooters, that I think when you look at things like MK Ultra and all the other things that other countries are doing, and like, I don't think it's that difficult to recruit and radicalize, to find, recruit and radicalize, and
you can
motivate someone into doing some of these horrific things. I don't think it's that difficult. Matter of fact, I think that's so much easier than putting 4 different shooters up or trying to use drones with laser beams. Like, that is a piece that we need answers to. That, going back to July 13th, like, why don't we have answers to what happened? Like, we have to wait for a documentary to come out from Tucker Carlson to get 98%, 1,000% more information than we've gotten from our own FBI, from a case that's supposedly closed, that's from a shooter that's dead. Like, why do we have to rely on Tucker to give us that information that our government, the government of, for, and by the people, that we should have oversight for? Why don't we have that information?
And that's a great question. What's the benefit of withholding that as opposed to releasing it? Epstein files are another one. What's the benefit of withholding that as of releasing it? It's like, oh, because we're the government and we say so.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't buy it, brother. Sorry.
I do think, even when you talk to, look, I love all our law enforcement out there. I think the vast majority of them are good at the federal level, state level, whatever. Huge supporter of law enforcement. But I do think there are bureaucrats, because I've met them. There are bureaucrats, there's politicians, and there's even federal law enforcement agents that have disdain for the American people, the thinking that, like, who are you to think you can hold me accountable? Who are you? Like, some of these people don't even think that the American people should have guns. Like, who do you think you are? I'm up here, you're just down here as a peasant. We'll give you the information that we decide that we're going to give you. And it's a need to know, and you don't need to know it, because that would put you in a position above me and hold me accountable. And I think there is a large portion, and that in essence is the deep state. There's darker, deeper states I believe in, but that is where a lot of this stuff comes from.
And knowledge is power, and
It is.
they know that. And in knowledge and a voice is real power, and they know that too. And so I think that if you can keep you dumb, stupid, and in the dark, then there's power there, and we're a product of that too.
I agree. And speaking of that, the information you shared here today, that's power. And that is, there's an option for people out there. Now, you can choose this, and you can assess everything that you've said, that we've talked about, and then you can juxtapose that against all the other information out there. And I think the reasonable people among us, we've given them information, we've given them power to make a decision, knowing a lot more at least. And so, man, number one, I thank you for everything that you've done for this country, your service.
I thank you, because I literally do. I thank you because it was brought to me that you're coming out and you were bucking the system, and you were coming out and you were like, let's not jump to this. Let's look at this. And then why it was brought to me is because of the absolute whipping you were taking. And I was like, wow, this is the kind of guy I want to fight with.
Well, when I compare my whipping to what you guys, like, it's an easy choice, man. Like, it's just the right thing to do. And who am I? Like, I can't look my kids, my family. I fought for this country. I believe in the principles in which this country is founded. I am not going to self-censor. I am definitely not going to, I would rather die than be shut up. I would rather die than take money to change my message. All right. To everything, folks, that you hear from Gary is me and me alone. And I don't care what anyone else says out there about me being a Fed, me pushing the narrative. It's the opposite. Who are they trying to silence? They're trying to silence me and other truth speakers out there. And you can assess for that for yourself. And for those of you already convinced of something else, there's nothing I'm going to do to change that. But no, you're the one with courage. You're coming out here, you're getting in front of the camera, you're answering hard questions. And I just applaud you. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for coming out here.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Man.
All right, folks. I hope you found this informative. I don't know. Just be smart out there, assess information as it comes in, and, you know, we're going to keep telling the truth here. Until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.